Well, hey there, guys, gals, and non-binary pals, and welcome to the SPL Week for Day 3 of the Road to Worlds. My name's Gore. That's inbound on the desk to lead us and shepherd us through the day. And, of course, it's going to be very, very fun. Of course, we just started with a really exciting SCC set, going 2-1. Niflheim Warriors able to find their win, so we are going to, as quickly as possible, jump into our SPL for the day. Again, Gore, inbound, and I think some very exciting sets today that, admittedly, they're tantalizing is the word I want to use for them, because it is. Maybe it's because my lunch just got delivered, but it's mouth-watering in a way, is the way I could describe it, because of the games that are ahead of us. So why don't we just go ahead and talk about what is there. The schedule for the day. If you've been watching, couple 3-2s, a 3-1, couple 3-0s this week so far. Dragons, Leviathans is the set that has me tantalized, and then the Warriors and Ravens a little bit later, which is one that I actually think is going to be a little spicy, and I'm excited to see, especially if we're going based on what they've said. I think both Zap and Genex, so Panatom said this is a quote-unquote, like the pick was blocked out, but that he had something that may be troll, but I think he's good, and so I think we might see something interesting there. Zap replied to it with, "Don't worry, I got a troll pick I think is good too," and so I don't know what to expect in that set. Could be bluffs, could be not. But the first one inbound, the Dragons, the Leviathans, and especially given how things have been working in the standings, this one feels really important. Dragons, there's a lot maybe on that side, and we can uncover that in a second, but the Leviathans right now, beating the Ferryman was a huge deal. Putting themselves at the top of the order division was a huge deal. And potentially continuing that kind of run and trying to find that dominance for them, it feels like is a way to prove that their efforts, especially since their change, has been a big deal. And you can see technically right now tied 5-1, but with that win over the Ferryman, I think the first of two matchups that they're going to have, Leviathans have a little bit that's going in their favor because it's in division. And this will be the first of their matchups against the Dragons as well. They're 1-4, so a couple of a lot of work. There's the phrase. They're going to have to do, at least on the Dragons, to try and put this in. And even more importantly, if we're going to touch on the Dragons, a roster swap that came in for this week as well, and one that, admittedly, on all of the teams that everybody would have predicted where something was going to change, I think the Dragons, it might have been one of the lowest on the expectations list.
Yeah, I think if you talk to a lot of community members and you kind of feel out what the community thinks, I think the community wanted to see a change from this Dragons team, but it was pretty unexpected to see something happen. These guys have been together for a while. It's only this is like the last day to be getting that roster change in, and they got it in just in time. And now we get to see Coast and Mike in that duo lane. Switches up a lot.
Yeah.
Coast, Vote do not play Smite similar at all.
It is
we see
very
a lot of Jingwei with Vote, a lot of playing for late game. Coast is playing on her. Coast is playing anything early game, and he wants to play through his lane, which is how Mike wants to play, and I think that's why you see this change, why you see the change to Vote. Mike made a lot of comments on his, I think it was his Twitch stream, so if you are curious about that, check out Mike's Twitch VOD. You can actually find out a lot of stuff about that. But unexpected change, to say the least, but a change that could really help kickstart this Dragons' second part of this phase and kick it kind of into overdrive, which is what they need.
Yeah, I think my favorite, and if you don't watch, if you're like too busy, I guess, to watch a VOD, I don't know. Mike's going to be way more detailed than this. There was like I think a small Reddit thread I saw that was like just a quick write-up. But to use his words, he said they ran out of cope, right? It's just they had a lot of excuses that they were making for themselves to say, you know what, this was fine. And I think he was actually very clear going into it. One of the things they had discussed was, is it going to be solo or carry, right? Was it Nika or Vote? And they ended up going for Vote. And like you said, replacing him with Coast. Very different play styles, much like you said. Like Vote, we did a poll or a questionnaire at the beginning of the year, described himself as the just sit in lane until level 20 and then show up and do the late game thing. And like you said, Coast is the guy who wants to 1v1 you, solo you out, taunt over your body, and then do it a second time if he gets the opportunity, even if it costs him his life. And so it's definitely going to change the dynamic. And for the first time in years, I mean, Dardez and Nika have been playing together for a long time. But Dardez, Nika, and Vote, I mean, that's like a 4 or 5 year running trio that has now kind of been broken apart. So how much do you anticipate with the carry specifically? It feels like it's a role that doesn't impact heavily, but also impacts super heavily. So how much do you think it changes the identity of the team?
I think it's more of a meta thing. I think duo currently is probably the most important position for the first 15 minutes. A lot of teams want to play for that shield camp. They want to play to invade those purple buffs. Mid, obviously going to be the most important role at almost all other points of the game because middle part of the map, you can rotate anywhere, so it's always going to be important there. But at this current stage of the meta, there's not a lot of early game fighting at anywhere on the map except maybe for that first blue buff or for those shield camps. So now those shield camps become even more important, and I think Mike and Vote, where they were on the same page, they played good Smite together, but they very rarely played to win this lane, and I think that needed to change, and I think Mike found somebody that he can win this lane with. They can play for those shield camps, they can play for the purple buffs, and I think it switches up a lot of this team's identity. So now it's just interesting to see how it looks from our perspective, because, they've already scrimmed a couple times.
Yeah, it's something I'm also just like reading the schedule and remembering things of the past. Because I saw you like hand wave when I had said it. That was the second time they had played the Ferryman this phase. And so they've already... I don't get to look forward to that matchup anymore.
Nope.
Luckily, I get to look forward to this one, so I guess it makes up for it somewhere. That's the thing that's really interesting, because these teams played actually on the very first day, these two, the Dragons and the Leviathans, and it was a 3-0 for the Leviathans at the time. But it feels like this Dragons team, mainly, with Coast coming in and shaking some things up, but what we saw as well with, I would say, the Leviathans team, right? You drop Zap, you pick up Panda, and what they had said when we talked to them about it, a lot of it was just straight up, yeah, it wasn't really a Zap is the problem thing, and much like Mike said, it's not like Vote's the issue, it's the team mentality issue, and the problem is when you've had like a certain core maybe that's been together for so long, it's easier to fall into that, well, you know what, next time, we got them in the future.
And I think that's a really good point to highlight. You think about Zap as a player, you think about PandaCat as a player, it's almost the same type of shift the Dragons are making. A more late game oriented, team fight player, Zapman and Vote, switching it out for PandaCat and Coast, probably our two most aggressive duo lane ADCs.
Yeah.
And it worked out very, very well for this Levi's team. They've been looking like one of the best teams in the entire SPL. And the Dragons have had competitive games. They're not a team that, even though their record says they're 1-4, they're very rarely getting blown out. They're very rarely not competing. They're not a 1-4 type of team. They're a very competitive team. So this little switch could be just exactly what's needed to kind of like kick them up a little bit.
I will have to say, my heart almost always goes out to Dragons fans, because like you said, they're not this team that's getting 3-0'd constantly and going 1-4. They're all those fours are hard fart fours. Like they get so far, they'll get to up to 0-1 last time we saw them, and then unfortunately crumble. And so that's kind of what that change was meant to combat.
And their wins are also the same thing. They're also 3-2 wins. They're not 3-0 wins. So they're always going to be good sets, and that's what you can look for with Dragon sets.
And you know what? That's what I'm looking forward to here as we jump into Game 1. Dragons will be first pick team. Leviathans will be on the right-hand side of the screen. And I'm really, really excited to see what kind of picks and bans, and if anything really changes, because admittedly, again, Chernobog, me and Mifflin were talking about this a little bit on the desk yesterday. It feels like you've got Chernobog, maybe your Freya and your Olorun really up at the top. And then if you get rid of those three, it's kind of a player dependent, like you said, Coast likes playing on her. So, you could potentially see that in the top three. If you go over towards like PandaCat, the dude loves Danza Burrow sometimes. So like it really is definitely, I think, a flexible meta form right now. But as we look at the bans that come through, Camazotz, Athena, and Raijin banned out by the Dragons. All of those feel like they've got a pretty good home to take away from the Leviathans. On the other side, the Chernobog, as we were just talking about it, the Morrigan, and the Ratatoskr gets banned away. Ratatoskr as well, over the last few days, has just skyrocketed. And that means Yemoja is going to be the Dragons' first pick.
And Rat and Athena, I think, are two of the higher picks that I think stick out to me as these are gods that are probably going to have to be banned almost all day today, because they have been running games when they are led through, so no surprise that they are banned. Jade Dragons, as you said, first picking that Yemoja, a ton of value in this Yemoja. You don't really show anything in your comp. You're just getting a really high prio, strong support guardian that can play just about any style you need. And then on the opposite side, Levi's locking in the Ama. A little curious, the Ama, we've seen a lot of Amas picked. A lot of times it's with a Hades ban, because that's a hard matchup for Ama to make it through. She has to walk up into the wave. Hades is allowed to blight the entire wave and then devour the souls, healing the wave, almost killing the Ama. It's a difficult matchup, so to see the Ama Proud a lot higher than maybe expected with the Hades open. Curious to see if the Dragons opt for the Hades, and Levi's with their second pick, pick that Olorun. They're wanting to play to win this duo lane. Even after Olorun's nerfs, he's still absolutely dominant in laning phase. Curious to see what Vote might go for to try to, combat that.
Well, I've got bad news for you. Vote's not going to go for anything.
Oh.
Coast, though, what he goes for, like you said, that one's going to be interesting. I do want to ask, though, because when we see Olorun in a lot of conversations like of the past, Sanctified Fields, if it's good, like it's always good, right? If the rest of Olorun's kit is even okay, Sanctified Fields is what like makes him good. And so I was going to ask about the Anhur because, we feel like in the past, I feel like it's been Camazotz, it's been Cthulhu, it's been anybody who has a long-channeled CC immune ult. And Anhur has that for a carry. We've already been talking about it as something Coast likes. Do you think, does it count and qualify as a counter, or does it just count as like ult for ult trader?
I think it's an ult for ult trader for a lot of points, but I also think the Obelisk slows down Olorun a ton too, makes it very hard for him to walk through areas.
Yeah, that dude doesn't have a dash.
Exactly. And then the ult cooldowns is something you have to highlight. Anhur's got a much lower cooldown ultimate. So I like the pick. Also, Pele for the Dragons. I've not seen a ton of Pele.
So she fell off hard.
She fell off pretty hard. Maybe we see her in mid. Maybe we see her in jungle. Sorry. And then the Levi's go for that Khepri, kind of that next pick after Yemoja is locked in. And as Yemoja's locked in by the Dragons, Khepri's that counter pick. Bans, Sun Wukong for the Levi's, Mercury for the Dragons. No Hades picked top 3. No Hades banned yet. Maybe an opportunity for the Levi's there to ban.
Yeah, and especially with Wukong getting prioritized over it. And Horus, I mean, admittedly, this is something that Nika's been playing. So I'm going to ask you, is this a we're not worried about Hades? Oh, specifically because maybe it's Nika playing it? Or is this a, you know what, that matchup, like we almost want you to play the Hades?
It could be they found like a jungler or something. Maybe they plan on putting this Pele mid and they have something in the jungle that can shut down that Hades.
Mm-hmm.
But that's just looking at this comp, Hades looks really good into Olo, into Amma, into Khepri. Not so much into Baba. I think Baba is one of the most self-sufficient backliners. A lot of good self-peel, good damage. And not Hades. We will not be seeing Hades.
And you know what? Okay, well, I was going to try to give it the benefit of the doubt for a moment because it was the only mage that was on the screen. But it does seem to be 3 mages locked in, which is not what I was anticipating towards the very end of this. Baba Yaga's been big. Paul's been playing it. But again, it depends on the team. It may be in priority of where that is because we see her get picked towards the very bottom, 7th overall. But Apwash and Agni. Now, we've seen Apwash in solo, and we know that like he's got a good, I guess, technically, quote-unquote, counter for a heal in that he has a stun for it if you heal during it, but it's been pretty much Baskin, and only Baskin who played it. So how much do you, I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this. How do you vibe with this Apwash going solo, or do you like Agni solo more?
That's a good way to word it. How do I vibe with it?
Yeah, how do you vibe with it?
I think Apwash is a really good solo laner. I think this matchup doesn't really make a ton of sense because if you don't go beads, your beads get forced really easily. They still had jungle counter pick. So now the Susano Amma is going to be trying to kill the Apwash, who has no dash, no CC immunity, and not a ton of like survivability in that lane outside of just a little bit of healing and some self-peel of damage. Really, that's just about it. But maybe he should win this 1v1 so hard that he just gets a free lead. But I'd still be worried if I was that Apwash about getting dove, about getting just, plucked and invaded at my blue buff. That's just, that's a scary 2v2 to be playing against.
Maybe this shows like some internal biases I didn't realize, which are players I expect to play things that are so off meta. To the point where I almost dead convinced myself it's fineokay playing Apwash, even though he's not even on the Dragons anymore. But no, it's Nika. And again, that's something that at least to me catches me off guard because we were talking about like differences of playstyle between Coast and Vote. But this feels like a difference in playstyle. I mean, Nika's been around forever, right? So he's definitely got the warriors, the guardians, the mages, the assassins solo under his belt as time goes on. But it's been a little while since we've seen him kind of jump off the beaten path.
Yeah, he's been picking a lot of Amma in this phase. He plays a lot. I mean,
his Amma's pretty good.
His Amma's very good.
Pretty good.
And we see a little bit of Wukong, a little bit of Hades, just kind of whatever is the top tier. We've not seen much Apwash from him. He very rarely picks something like this Apwash. As you stated, the really only Apwash player that we've seen is Baskin, and Baskin looks fantastic on it. Don't get me wrong. Makes the Apwash pick actually look really good a lot of times. But it is going to be something new that we have to see from Nika. Does he have the ability to kind of survive that laning phase, play around ganks well enough? He's a smart player. He's a veteran. He should be able to, but if he does fall behind even a little bit, that's a lane that could just get exploited by this Levi's team.
And that's something that I think is like you said, going to have to be kind of counterbalanced and maybe showcases and gives us a small revelation into where the Dragons are trying to play through. Maybe they want to put all their focus on the right-hand side of the map, and they trust that, Coast over here, I almost said vote again as well, but Coast over there on the Anhur is going to be safe enough and honestly, knowing Coast strong enough and aggressive enough that he might just run the lane on his own. And so looking at this matchup again, last time these two teams met this phase, it was a 3-0 for the Leviathans. We've seen a different Dragon since then. Do you feel like there's a 3-0 on the horizon for the Leviathans, or do you think that this Dragons comp right here is good enough to at least sustain one game?
I think the first time you ever see a swap happen, a roster swap happen, teams start to play well just because that change is happening. So I expect to see some fight back from this Dragons team. Levi's have looked really good, though, so the Dragons are going to be playing their A game just to be able to compete.
Yeah, you're going to have to step up. We'll see how it looks. Coast now on the Dragons and joining the duo lane for this team. We'll find out how well they can do as we jump down to Game 1 with Frog and Trelly.
Thank you so much, Gore, and Inbound on the desk. Jade Dragons coming in with a new look, a little bit of a roster change. They talked about it, of course, on the desk. And they could not be facing a larger battle to start things off. You've got Frog, you've got Trelly, you've got Doug taking us through the battleground. And Trelly, I appreciate the composition, and don't you worry, we'll get to the Opwash solo. I'm excited to get there. But this is a strong Leviathans team, just recently taking down the Ferryman. The Jade Dragons, they have their work cut out for them.
Yeah, I couldn't cook up a better Leviathans draft if I tried. This is really exactly what they would want. I mean, and you might say, hey, maybe the Chernobog over the Olorun, but when I made my tier list with PandaCat, he put Olorun even higher than Chernobog, for ranked specifically. So I think that just pressure alone, he loves this pick as well. So as far as composition goes, real disgusting here for the Leviathans. Doesn't mean that the Jade Dragons comp is that much worse. Yemoja on her is going to be decent for pressure early on. I think Agni is rising in the tier list for me personally. Just a pick that has some great damage, great space control with that stun. And of course, Pele, top of the meta for a reason. Very solid jungler for LASBRA. But then you have to talk about, the elephant in the room, the Opwash in the room. How good can this pick really be when it's in Nika's hands? That's the question. You're up against Amaterasu, a pick that does like to get those tick heals online. It's not as telegraphed, though. Oh my goodness.
Wow, Dardez taking a lot of poke early on. Sheento and adapting, of course, bringing in that mid 2v2 Susano late picked in the draft. Agni late picked in the draft as well, and initially we thought that may have been a mage, like Gore wanted to give it the benefit of the doubt, but you're right to focus on this Opwash. And they talked about, he could get focused. They could decide to put some of that aggression. Oh my goodness, I didn't think he had the damage. But LASBRA turns the first blood. They might even try to find it onto adapting. The damage coming through is enough from the Pele and the Dragons on the board early.
Wow, it is very difficult to die on Baba Yaga early. Like, you have the passive with the house. You have plenty of healing. You can get your 2 and your 3. You don't even have to get the 1. Major fumble there from Sheento, I'm guessing. Saw the damage that was on the Dardez last one. Wants to go in for another gank onto Sheento. How much does he have? Not this time. Blast off good for the escape. Either way, very difficult to actually find a first blood onto Baba Yaga. Major fumble there, but I think because of the poke that went on to Dardez early, Agni was one shot, right? That makes you step up a little bit more. That gives you confidence. And you get punished for it. Conduit Gem does give you that extra burst damage, and Dardez was able to find it this time, though. LASBRA was the one with the real DPS. Pele getting first blood.
Yeah, not only do they find the first blood, but LASBRA comes right back and burns the beads as well away from the Baba. So an opportunity as they round out to level 5 to potentially go on something of a counter gank. And Baba seems like one of those picks that has been routinely very, very safe. Of course, very safe in those team fights especially, but not one that we've seen the junglers target on trying to put down early. Mostly because I think even if you try and put her down early, she just stacks so well. Like she's going to scale no matter what.
Yeah, it's not going to hurt Sheento too much. What really is the benefit is getting LASBRA ahead, right? You get that first blood. XP-wise, not ahead. Of course, Adapting is going to be able to get a little bit more farm because of it, but that first blood bounty is the real difference maker. Getting Soul Eater online as quickly as possible is going to be the real benefit there for the Jade Dragons. But I'm telling you, if you have the house passive stacked up, and if you have your double potions, it is very difficult. One of the hardest early gang, like pre-level 5 gods to gank in Baba, because you can actually just use your escape as a damage tool to help clear the wave. Either way, though, nice start for LASBRA. Purple buff not going to be invaded. Well, attempted evade, but not going to be confirmed. Coast is able to pick that one up. But the Jade Dragons are in the driver's seat. They've got this level 5 Pele. LASBRA has the ability to sort of rotate across the map and see where he wants to try and get active. My issue is, do you ever look towards solo lane? Like, how much support is Nika going to be giving you on a gank? You pretty much drop your burst, empty the crypts, and that's about it. You hope that LASBRA can finish off that damage. There's not much CC that Nika's going to be providing, and because of that, you saw LASBRA look over and say, any gank attempts? No? Okay, I'm out. And he just bailed. I think the correct play.
Adapting. Hovering over on this left-hand side. Great ultimate channel from Coast. Prevents the pullback in there, despite the attempt from Adapting. I think this dual lane is an interesting one to focus on. This is where the change occurred. Naturally, VaporishCoast and PBM, the new dual laner to the Jade Dragons. And they prioritized this Anhur. Top 3 in the draft. One with a little bit more aggression and maybe an ult-for-ult trade when it comes to the Olorun matchup specifically. But one that Coast can be a little bit more aggressive on, and that's maybe one of the things he's looking to bring to this new roster.
It's funny because I forgot that Coast and Adapting were teammates until that taunt right there. Right when I saw Coast taunt Adapting, I'm like, oh yeah, they used to be on the Ravens. They were at Worlds last year. Like these guys go way back. In fact, you know what? Coast self-proclaims that he's the one that brought Adapting back into SMITE. I'm not sure if or competitive SMITE. I'm not sure if I believe it, but that's where that taunt comes from, right? When your boy tries to gank you and he fails, you got to make sure he gets a little bit tilted. That's kind of the idea. Coast never won to shy away from the taunts. Attempted gank towards fineokay here. I don't imagine he's in too much trouble. Yeah, ult and dash away. It seems easy enough.
Channels it. fineokay doesn't dash towards the tower. It dashes towards the help instead, and Adapting there to prevent the blue buff invade. But after that first blood, things have kind of quieted down. A little bit of a lead for the Jade Dragons. I think, you know, some of that's first blood bounty, some of that is the neutral farm, as we've had a little bit of pressure on those fights on the camps on either side of the map. If you're looking at the jungle matchup here specifically, Pele's got a lot of early damage, and after that early kill, are we waiting for that Soul Eater to stack up before LASBRA wants to get involved again, or do you feel like he should be forcing the issue a little bit more?
I mean, he did all he could, right? That's what I'm saying. That's what a gank onto fineokay is going to look like. You go over, you drop everything, fineokay gets out. I do not think that Nika provides much lane pressure. He's just there to stack up, I assume, a Tablet of Destinies that will come later. He only has Breastplate for now. But there's not going to be much camping of a solo lane. It doesn't really exist. So I want LASBRA to get active where he can. Most of these junglers feel safe going for the solo lane ganks because they're so far away from everyone else. But fineokay is not going to be put into a bad position very easily. So if LASBRA does want to find a gank, it's probably going to be over towards duo, towards mid lane. That's the better end. But as far as, do I want him doing more? I mean, using ult off cooldown is not going to be easy, but so far, already a first blood and an attempted gank. It's not like LASBRA's not shooting.
Yeah, no, he's... That's the worst, when you stop shooting, when you just lose the confidence. Nobody's lost the confidence thus yet. That's the important bit here. See some pings and a rotation here from Coast and PBM. Thought might see Dardez try to join them, but this duel lane was the place where I thought we might see the action early, but I mean, we've known the Jade Dragons to, at least in their past iteration before the roster change, one of the teams in the league that have enjoyed going late. I think a 65-minute game earlier on in the phase.
Oh, and they loved it.
They are one of the teams that enjoy the scaling up, and you know, there's potential for the roster change to switch up that mindset a little bit, but as far as Coast goes, he's just wanted to survive this engagement right here. PandaCat takes a lot of return damage. On the other side, though, Dardez under pressure, good beads, prevents the knock up, but the stun, it's not there. The return damage Might be enough, though. LASBRA looking for the ultimate and finds the trade onto adapting. Damage continuing on the left-hand side. In the mid lane fight, LASBRA, he doesn't want to slow down. Sheento under pressure here, and no ultimate available. Just needs a little bit more damage, and Sheento looking to fall, needs to hit the one, and will do so. 3 kills on the board for LASBRA.
Wow, that first ultimate needed to connect onto adapting, and because of that, easy chase down potential. But then Sheento falls as well, just holding the blink until that unruly magic comes through. Beautiful play there from LASBRA. 3-0 already. Had a great turn over in duo lane. I mean, that was PandaCat getting aggressive, dropping that Sanctified Fields. Ko said, I'll turn around, Desert Fury you in the face, and then we'll attempt to look for a kill onto Ronngyu. Doesn't end up finding it, but still, that's a long cooldown towards that Sanctified Field. And having that down makes an easy target for a gank if, number one, you're dealing with the Khepri ult, and number two, you've got the beats down, which they don't have both of. They only have the Khepri ult down for the time being. Either way, though, LASBRA gets a full Dawnbringer after that back. Seems like a tankier style Pele build that we'll be seeing. You come off to a good start like this, not going to be the worst idea. It's just that late game scaling you're going to be lacking unless he goes into a bit more damage later on.
Pressure on the coast here as adapting rotates over again. Well channeled on the ultimate and a great usage of the relics as well. The gank will not be successful. A lot of tools used there, adapting. Doesn't actually, I think only uses, oh no, he did use the blink. So a little bit of that gank pressure you'll lose for the next 2 minutes or so. And that begs the question of what the Jade Dragons want to do with this lead, because around the 9-minute, 10-minute mark here, this lead is not insignificant. LASBRA taking a little bit of poke, forces the ult out from Sheento. And that's now a couple of tools you forced out of the Leviathans. The Jade Dragons might have a window here soon.
They do. Do they try and send over an Outpost stacking Book of Thought to help with Gold Fury is my question, though. Seems like no, maybe looking for a River's Rebuke. Notably, Ronngyu already went back and upgraded for the full Phantom Shell, so not going to be the biggest deal if the team gets caught in that ultimate as long as Rongyu's around. But there's so much pressure that's been thrown out. I mean, you said it yourself, Sheento having to go into the ultimate defensively, and LASBRA did not use much. No blink, no ult. It was just pressure from Pele alone. Not to mention how much has been going the way of VaporishCoast. Seems like Adapting's tried to gank him 2-3 times, and did walk away with the beads in the ultimate, but did not net that kill, which means as long as Coast is sitting underneath the tower line, he'll be okay. Do you see him at the tower line? No, he's actually at PandaCat's tower line. That's because someone must have called, hey, Adapting's over in right lane. You are free to farm up for a bit. A lot of ward coverage, though, on the left side of the map, which is important. When you see Susano show up twice before 10 minutes, makes you want to get some wards down on that side of the map.
You start looking at builds, you start looking at the state of the game, and a lot of the members here on the Dragons are hitting those 2-item power spikes. Flat Pen for Dardez coming online, stacking, as you mentioned, for Nika. And with these neutral objectives, Gold Fury's up on the map, Pyromancer to be up in the next couple of minutes, and Beacon just a minute away. I mean, are you forcing these objectives? If you're the Dragons, sure you have a lead, but this feels like you don't have to wait. You don't have to let your composition scale anymore. You're in a position where you can try and force your hand around one of these neutral objectives.
Yes, that's the issue with the Jade Dragons composition. I think with the lead they have, you'd think they'd be able to go in for these objectives pretty easily, but I'm really looking at solo lane, right? If it's the Leviathans with this lead, fineokay has already teleported out, pulled a Gold Fury, used that passive and said, hey, we're going in for a burn immediately. But because Nika's on the outwash, who is stacking up Book of Thought and wants to sit there in lane and sort of just, you know, farm up, get his items online, it's not as easy. And it's also not as impactful. Amaterasu with Shoguns just brings so much more DPS to an objective than the outwash is at the moment. So the Jade Dragons, despite having this lead, don't really feel that confident going in for a pull just yet. Maybe towards a Beacon fight, that seems a bit more likely. But once Nika gets second Relic, which he just did, he just picked up that beats, I think the Jade Dragons will feel a lot more confident sending him into team fights and rotating. That's what he's done. He is in mid lane currently for the Beacon. Will they group up towards Gold Fury after? It doesn't seem like it. Looks like grab the Beacon and back up.
Well, he'll stay on this side of the map, at least for the time being.
Okay, there we go.
Some of the pings come through, and the Gold Fury gets picked up, and look at this shred. Oh my goodness. In an instant, the objective falls, and the gold difference out to above 4,000 for the Jade Dragons. The Pyromancer right around the corner for them to focus on as well. And they don't lose much for it. Nika, as soon as that ends, he teleports right back over. I'm not even sure he missed a wave for it.
Yeah, and that's what you had to wait for. I mean, he didn't have the teleport up, didn't have his bees. The second they get online, Nika makes the rotation, looks at the beacon. The Leviathans say, hey, you know what? We have no ability to even fight towards that beacon, so let's run away. Beacon turns into fury real quickly, and because of that, no presence is shown. The Jade Dragons continue to push their lead, which is exactly what they need to do. Getting idle sitting back, not going to be the best looking, actually. Mike drops that ult just to zone for shield buff. Like, he's like, you're not walking up. You're also not fighting. That's the other key difference. The Leviathans, if they've been forcing fights, if they've been getting active, you feel pretty bad about dropping River's Rebuke there. But adapting goes in for a cheeky pull. If he misses, that's it. That's the fight. Reset. That's how it's been. So you feel pretty decent just dropping ult cooldowns like that when you know that there's no aggression coming your way.
We'll have to see how the fights round out, I think, as we get a little bit farther into the game here. Dragons holding on to a lead, grab that first neutral objective. But as we, at some point, they can't give away the Gold Fury for free. I'm not sure we're there quite yet, but we haven't seen this op wash in a minute. We've seen it from Baskin, I think, mentioned that SOT has played it as well. A little bit worried here that fineokay might be under some pressure on the right-hand side. But, I mean, what does this op wash bring in the team fights? Is it just drop ult and try and absorb cooldowns? He doesn't feel like he's going to bring as much as a traditional warrior would.
No, it's a very different play style. Very solid burst damage. You drop this ult, make everyone retreat. Sure, Ronngyu can stay and try and go in for a steal. He's not going to get it. The Jade Dragons pick up the Pyromancer there. But you saw it. Empty the crypts, force everyone to run away. Try being Sheento. You go up into the house, you think you're going to get some good DPS off, and then you see all the damage coming through from Nika. Not going to be too much of an issue here, just using the Dazzling Offensive to pull the beads off because the rest of the Leviathans might have wanted to chase down. It's just a no-play zone, and it's very difficult to rely on sustain like Olorun's and Amaterasus do when there's just so much anti-heal coming from one source. You can try and focus him out, though, which is kind of the call here, right? Beads go down for Nika for a solid minute and a half or so. This outwash may have a target on his back. Just breastplate with that full Genji's guard bot. So that might be just enough survivability to try and make it to this next spawn of beads before Nika puts himself too bad out of position.
The longer this game goes, the more worrying it maybe is, though, for the Dragons fans, just because this is almost where the Leviathans want to play the game. They have found a lot of success thus far this season, topping their division with these late-game team fights. They're good in comms. They're all on the same page. They've bounced back and forth between objectives very well. And so this gold lead, sure, it's 3K, it's 4K, but it's been 3K, 4K for about 5 minutes now, maybe since they got that gold fury. It's a little bit evening out. And the longer this game goes, we get to the next neutral objective, the next couple of spawns. I think the Leviathans are more and more likely to find a team fight that they are more willing to take as they scale up a bit.
I would hope so, because they haven't found a fight they've really wanted to take yet. It was really just that pick from adapting, which is nice, but not so much a team fight. It's just been retreating, sort of defending. Good poke from Dardez just shows what this Agni can accomplish if you sit there and try and trade range with him. One of the longest range mages that you can really go for in the current meta in mid lane. Because of that, Pyromancer's not up for a while. Fire Giant might be the call here. I mean, why else would PandaCat be rotating over? There's an attempted pull, maybe just a check to sort of do a a face check, see what's happening. Right at the spawn of the Primal Fury, though, they go in for. Does anyone have vision here? Yes, it looks like Mike's on the way. Not going to be able to sneak this one. The rest of the Jade Dragons are coming.
Potential idea from the Leviathans to try and sneak this one away if possible, but it'll be sniffed out early in the rotation. They don't even stick onto the Gold Fury. They want to make sure that everybody's over here. They can try and defend it if it was a committal from the Leviathans. Instead, though, the Tier 1 tower, that's the engagement first off, and adapting. He's on to LASBRA. The damage is finished off by fineokay, and the ultimate is beautiful. Scarab's Blessing keeps all 5 members of the Levi's alive. They find a pick in trade for the Tier 1 tower, and they look to back off.
Yeah, all starts with the Leviathans. They know, hey, that Primal Fury is going to spawn in and the Jade Dragons are going to be there. We can put some pressure over to right when it happens, check and see if they've got the wards. Mike and Dardez show up immediately, but unfortunately LASBRA sticks around a bit too long, adapting, finds a beautiful blink. I thought because the one missed, the dash was necessary to confirm that kill. May have been a bit of trouble. Ends up not mattering too much, and the Jade Dragons will take, I was going to say the consolation prize of the Primal Fury, but you're pretty happy with just getting that, because there wasn't too much to fight over. I mean, you get a tier 1 tower and the Primal Fury. Leviathans will be able to grab a tier 1 in return, but I think you're okay with losing LASBRA. The real issue is the shutdown gold you've just given over to fineokay. This Amaterasu is a growing problem. Level 18, most farm on the map currently, and was able to just walk away, split push over the right side, try and push a tier 2 tower. We stopped by Mike, but still, probably a lot of gold in fineokay's hands for now. And once he rotates out, yeah, solid 3k. He's going to back for a full item. And he'll be able to really show how much damage this Amaterasu can do. I wonder if he goes into Kins or if he feels like he needs a little bit more tank stats. Looks like Spirit Robe, maybe Kins' next item. Once he gets that, he'll be able to shred through just about anyone.
Yeah, we've seen fineokay with a couple of different play styles. We've seen him just, hard rotate on this Amaterasu. You get a lead, he's suddenly at every Gold Fury fight, but the farm prioritization like this, he's ahead, allows his team to pull up objectives like this. Leviathans step up, grab the Pyromancer, a little bit of a steal attempt from the Jade Dragons there, but nobody in position in time. And at 20 minutes here, Trilly, only 5 kills between these two teams. And it just feels like we're waiting for the pin to drop, waiting for somebody to commit to an objective. And as I say it, naturally, Fire Giant picked up by the Dragons, half HP to start things, but this doesn't seem like it wants to be a commit until the ultimate gets dropped. It's a 50-50. The Dragons, they've got the Fire Giant, and they're retreating on the fight afterwards, adapting in the back line. Looks like PBM may be the target, but adapting finds a double ultimate, and Coast shuts him down. The Dragons, now they're on the chase.
Yeah, not a great dive there, but LASBRA, he's not going to let you run away for free. Blinks forward just to get some damage off. No more chase down potential for the Dragons for now. I mean, I love the call to commit to that Fire Giant, but fineokay uses ult to try and go in for the steal, which means he's not diving with adapting. Adapting goes all by himself to the back line. There were full relics up. I don't think he's ever going to get a pick there. Maybe thought he was close enough to Ronngyu to get that Scarab's Blessing, but he was not. Ends up dying apparently for nothing. Tier 2 tower also drops, and the Jade Dragons, they're not done pushing. They're going to group up on the left side of the map and go ahead and grab this tier 2 tower. Now that we've got some downtime, the topic of conversation with the Jade Dragons has been their sieges. Would VaporishCoast be enough to try and fix some of those siege issues? Well, they're sieging forward right now. Left side bird is the target, and already Mike's tanking it up.
They're here. The Leviathans have to react. They pull in Nika, but the ultimate's still down for PBM. And fineokay, he's got his ultimate backed up. He's on the front lines. And Coast, they turn the damage around. fineokay's forced back into the enemy jungle. Look how low, but it just doesn't matter. He made the space. Adapting, it's gotta be LASBRA. He has to go insane, and the damage,
nothing,
it's not there.
He gets no one.
Dardez finds PandaCat way up in the front of the fight, but LASBRA not getting any kills. He gets all the TKOs though. Everybody is forced back to base, and the space is made onto the bird, but they don't have the damage. The chase down's still here. fineokay pushes them off the bird, and the pull not there. The root off the mark as well. The Leviathans, they might have had a chase, but ultimately just a 1-for-1.
Yeah, they've got fineokay's passive, or first ability rather. They had the movement speed. They could have chased down, but the issue, of course, was Mike's sustain. Just keeping everyone full HP. Do you really want to try and chase down a Yemoja? The Riptides, the healing, probably not the best idea. I'm baffled that LASBRA gets no one there. And then you realize he only had Dawnbringer and Serrated Edge. You need a little bit more DPS to be able to find those kills. I thought he was going to commit a bit harder. But you get 2 tier 2 towers. It's not the end of the world. Remember, this is a very early Fire Giant for the Jade Dragons. Just the fact that they even went in for a Phoenix is a bit risky when you don't have guaranteed runic bombs or confirmation or a level lead, whatever. But in this case, you're happy that you got 2 tier 2 towers. It looks like a possible free Gold Fury as well. There is about a minute and 11 seconds left. Do the Jade Dragons want to try and go in for a Phoenix Bowl? I don't think so. Probably just grab this Fury and reset for the next FG. One thing I did notice is how much damage Nika has been doing. Not really a traditional tank-style outwash build. Sure, you got your Breastplate and your Genjis, but no Tablet of Destinies, that's the huge. Breastplate, Typhon's Fang. Might even get a Soul Reaper last item, who knows? Point being, this outwash is swinging. He's not just there for show.
Yeah, when you drop that ult on an objective, you know, it was a little bit of a coin flip on the last Fire Giant, but it's a very weighted coin flip, right? Dragons, they've been okay with taking those types of plays. We'll see if they do it around the next Fire Giant as well. Still won't be EFG for quite a while, but that early Fire Giant was, I think, pre-20 minutes or right around that time. Leviathans, though, they've got to answer back. Right now, they're doing it in the macro, trying to grab what they can, and somehow they put the Dragons on defense, although I'm not sure they're super willing to step up into this tier 2. My concern is more around this Fire Giant fight. Last time, they lost the weighted coin flip, and they lost adapting on the dive. And it feels like maybe they commit one way or the other, but I mean, how do they fight back into this next Fire Giant siege?
I mean, I think it goes a lot better if fineokay and adapting dive in unison, or at least right after fineokay gets some relics, some escapes down, then adapting's able to go in. But it was too split last time. And the Jade Dragons are going to be the first ones here. They already have their ward coverage. They're already at the Fire Giant before it spawns in. And this is going to be hard to deal with. Titans are pushing down the right side of the map. It seems like both teams are going to go ahead and try and defend this one. Phantom Shell is up, so Ronngyu going to make sure his team's not in a terrible position if Mike is able to find a massive ultimate. It seems like just kill the Titans and then reset is the game plan, unless someone just bites off a little more than they can chew. fineokay has been apt to try to start fights if he gets the chance.
Every ultimate available, every relic available for both sides here. It's the Jade Dragons, though. They've got the lead in gold and experience here. Some upgraded starters on their side. Only a couple of upgraded starters on the other side. They've got their Titan pushing in. It's all about how deep the Leviathans want to commit to this defense. They'll give up the tier 1, take down the Titan in right, but the Jade Dragons, they're thinking, well, if they gave up tier 1, they might just give up the Fire Giant.
My Adapt takes a lot of damage already. Cannot walk up to LASBRA and Dardez. Fire Giant starts up. Adapting wants to go back to base. Is he really going to retreat here?
Wow.
Yes. Adapting's gone. And look at this. They're committing already.
They're committing. They've got to go for it. They secure the Fire Giant and the Leviathans. They flip-flop too much. Nobody willing to step in. No steal attempt, it looked like. And on her basic attack is the secure there. 400 damage. Regardless of what it was, though, Jade Dragons, a 10k gold lead now, and Fire Giant power play for the next 4 minutes.
And it's just so hard to walk in. I mean, you were asking me earlier, how much does this outwash really bring to the table? That's kind of the idea. You drop empty the crypts. In this case, you also drop River's Rebuke. Mike says, are you going to walk through my ult? Or are you going to use Phantom Shell offensively to step forward? Ronngyu says no, because his jungler's been half health before the fight even began. Adapting goes back to base.
Whoa.
Could be a body block here. You gotta stop the dash. fineokay. Looks like knows that there's someone behind him and is gonna go in front of him. It would take way too long to try and chase him down, so the team opts against it. But there are still minions. Okay, I was gonna say LASBRA was heading over. It looks like they're just gonna let him push for now. Either way, Adapt getting poked out there, real unfortunate. Just goes to show, if Dardez catches you with the Flame Wave stun, I mean, you need a relic or you need to get out of there, and neither one of those things happened, which means Adapting gets 30% of his HP just only alive and has to go back to base. 5v4, you lose Fire Giant, and the Jade Dragons have one more chance to go in for a siege before the Fire Giant gets enhanced. Seems like they're going to do a bit of a split here. I'm wondering how they're doing it. So far, it looks like a 1-4. Not easy to pull off. They don't really have Runic Bombs to play with, though, so this is going to be a slow siege, if anything.
They've got plenty of time to work with. 2 minutes still on this Fire Giant power play. And the 4-1 setup means 4 or 5 minion waves they can use to try and push this one up. But it looks like it's a switch. They send the Assassin over to mid, keep the remaining 4 members on that left-hand side. A little bit of poke comes out early, and this might be the go button. Minions in. Titan starting to Phoenix starting to be hit as fineokay takes a ton of poke damage. The Ankh gets popped, the blink in from LASBRA. Sheento under pressure. Scared Blessing keeps them alive, but they're stuck inside the waves. The Phantom Shell is not there. Adapting trades one back, but two are already down for the Levi's. The Phoenix has fallen, and the Jade Dragons, they break the base.
I can't believe how late that Phantom Shell was. Ronngyu couldn't get close enough to help his team out. What a beautiful ultimate from PolarBearMike. One bird down, but Adapting goes forward, does not have the damage, and it looks like fineokay, he's hung out to dry.
Gotta be careful here. fineokay, he's up too far, and Dardez grabs the Soul Lander. 4 strong here still for the Jade Dragons, and the sustain from PBM. They're still almost full HP with a wave here in the middle lane. They've got to be careful though. A 2v4, this is far from guaranteed. The damage gets dropped. The Titan is falling fast. 25%, 0%, and the Jade Dragons take game 1.
And I can't give enough praise to the entirety of this Dragons team. I mean, LASBRA takes the early game by storm, says, don't worry guys, I got you. Then, once Nika rotates out at level 12, he makes a huge difference. It's Alpwash was absolutely chunking and just made sure no one walked up. Mike? These Rivers Rebukes, they were just on point, whether they're blocking you off from Fire Giant or just trapping in both carries of the enemy team underneath the Phoenix. There can't be an issue with Siege when you're making plays like that.
No, and I think back to early in the game, Ronngyu got this Phantom Shell at like level 5. Like he first back, or maybe after Thieves it was.
I don't even know if he used it. Like he used it there at the end, but like I don't know if he actually used it to get anyone out.
Yeah, it was just for such an importance to that relic. Yemoja making the huge play at the end. That's game 1 for the Jade Dragons. We'll throw it to a quick break and see you for game 2.
That's right. Right now, you could go to youtube.com/SmiteVod. If you missed any sets, let's say you lost one yesterday and you were looking for that, there's one for you. But you could also go to youtube.com/SmitePro, and there's a ton of content. I have it open right here. First off, I see a recap inbound. You were part of that for yesterday. A 45-minute team check-in with the Oni Warriors. If you were wondering some stuff about them, you could listen to them. That breakdown that started the desk on Friday is up there as well. So Teamfight Insight with Mifflin, as well as a 53-minute waiting room that I was not a part of, where presumably the entire time they talk about how terrible of a person I am, as well as a bunch of shorts. Wow. I don't know. A bunch of shorts up there looking towards, like Panatom and LASBRA's top 5 gods in Smite, the Meta Monday with LASBRA's Pele build, one that we just got to see in action, top plays, things like that get thrown up there. So whether you want to watch the shorts or the videos, a lot of content, and again, all of that is at youtube.com/SmitePro, and you're going to be able to find that. It's Gorett's Inbound, and segue into this. It's the Dragons who are up 1-0. I should have used LASBRA. I literally was just talking about him.
The Pele.
He was the perfect LASBRA. Oh my god, I lost the word. Perfect segue. Maybe the perfect LASBRA, depending on your opinions on LASBRA's ups and downs. It is a really good game for the Dragons, though. And, we were watching it. And there are times where you get the Leviathans fighting back, but it really did feel like the driving force of the Dragons was just dictating that game through and through.
Yeah, a very difficult comp for the Levi's to even break through into. I was worried a little bit about that solo lane. Nothing happened in that solo lane outside of a lot of farming. That was just about it. One gank, nothing really happened. The big talk about point for this early portion is that mid lane and those early ganks that LASBRA put out, a lot of pressure onto Sheento. Sheento had a couple early deaths. He had the second one at around 8 minutes. And LASBRA, on this Pele, really was the driving force for the early game, got the team through that early portion, got them to a lead. And then late game, Coast, even Nika, usually you don't think of soul laners as great late game, gods, but that's the benefit of Opwash, a phenomenal late game god. And then the Yemoja ultimates that we saw that game, incredible.
Yeah, and there were, even that one right there at the end, we're watching this from Nika's perspective, but a lot of the setup right there, that was a phenomenal ult from Mike. And like you said, I think it just kind of very consistently stayed that way. There was Phantom Shells on the other side, sometimes either pop too late, sometimes just not available to you. And unfortunately for the Leviathans, that leads to some slash lines that aren't looking too great, damage numbers. That match up, at least, if you're going 1-to-1, you get a little bit more damage out of adapting than you actually do LASBRA. But it's the effective damage, I think, that matters the most here, and that's that, the 19,000 from Dardez lets him go 3-1-3, whereas the 17,000 for Sheento gets him 4 assists, things like that, transitioning it into kills. And unfortunately, when it came to objective play as well, those walls, if we're talking about Yemoja walls, also just made it so much easier. I think, first Fire Giant, 50-50, goes the Dragons. Second Fire Giant, Leviathans just didn't feel like they could step up to it, and the Dragons were able to control it a lot better. So it just felt like team presence on the map, on the board, was all around higher than what we're used to seeing.
Yeah, and on top of the zone control that Yemoja ult brings, Opwash is bringing a ton of zone control. Even Coast with those Anhur ones, they were placed in incredible spots where you either have to walk through this and take a ton of auto attack or ability damage from either the Agni or the Opwash, or you're just forced into just a bad position where you have to walk away from your team, which neither way is going to be good. Looking at the last game's P's and B's, a lot of prio into the Yemoja. That is maybe something we should first touch on. Probably not something we want to see Mike on again. Levi should either take it away. They take this first side P's and B's, so they had the opportunity to either ban it or play it. Pele, first ban. No surprise after LASBRA's game. Phenomenal game.
Yeah, that reminder of hey, yeah, just because she's fallen off doesn't mean she's not good. And LASBRA, I think, emphasizing that pretty heavily. Game 2, like you said, Leviathans, the Pele, the Ratatosker banned away for them. They are going to be first pick, so I'm going to keep my eyes on the Yemoja as well for Ronngyu, because that is insane when he gets it. Other side right now, Dragons, Chernobog, Camazotz. So one of those maybe a quote-unquote must-ban. The other one a must-ban against the Leviathans. And then the rest TBD. Ama gets banned out to round out the top 3 from the Leviathans. And it will be Yemoja banned by the Dragons. So a lot of picks, again, powerful picks still open. I know we were talking about this. I think it was Genetics who had said it during that Oni Warriors check-in. They asked about the meta, and Genetics was like, there's still,
Athena.
we're in a spot where you could ban 6 different gods every time, and you have an argument for at least 5 different gods for your top pick every game.
Yeah, I think other than Chernobog, who has firmly cemented himself as the best god
He's
in the
guy.
game. Yeah, he is him. Everyone else, there's a bunch of good gods. This Athena, another god we've actually seen. I'm pretty sure J-Mac told me the stats yesterday with Yemoja, and she's sitting at like a 70% win rate or something like that. So if you're getting this god, you have almost 3 wins out of 4 times when you're picking this character. And Ronnie, we've seen him play it before. This was kind of the god that the Levi's made their first stamps with in this phase where it's like, these guys are very good. They're very good around this Athena. Ronnie plays this Athena fantastic. I expect it to go there. Yes, we've seen some flex potential with this Athena. Will it go mid? Maybe. Probably not. It's probably going to Ronnie. He's played it really well, and it's something that's just really easy to play around. And the Jade Dragons, with the Athena gone, Yemoja banned, they have an opportunity for the Khepri or an Afro. They lock in the Afro, and they lock it in early. When you already know the enemy has their support pick already locked in, 99% chance this is Athena support. Aphrodite is the opt-in for the Dragons. They don't wait for that 3rd slot. They want to get this Afro, and they want to get it now.
And the thing that's interesting, at least in my mind, when we talk about this, especially you say, well, the other team's already got their support, usually that means, unless you're picking something that you think is going to get banned, you could wait a little while. Like, at minimum to your 3rd pick, but sometimes even through the bans. And so Afro, this is worth mentioning because it's the Dragons. First off, the priority on her is out of whack because it feels like she's low priority. So even with the argument I'm about to make in their favor, it's messing with me a little bit. Maybe it's just saving priority for somebody else instead. Like you said, most likely support.
Cerberus.
Dardez has to be on that list of only players right now probably willing to take Afro into mid. Do you think? I mean, I don't think there's a mid laner right now that I'm thinking Afro's better than.
Yeah, probably not. There's always potential, like you said. Dardez, not too surprising. Like if we expected any mid laner to pick it, it's definitely Dardez.
Yeah.
Mike has picked this too much for me to not think it's going to Mike.
He does love him some Aphrodite.
He really does love it. And they pair the Anhur with it. It gives him a lot of kill potential in lane, a lot of safety granted to that Anhur who doesn't have a ton of safety in his kit. He's a very aggressive god. And the Levi's opt for the set soul. Much easier 2v2 for the Levi's this game. That Olorun was trying to get played around. Coast played off the ganks so well in that early portion that we really didn't touch on.
Yeah.
So many good impales to get adapting away from him or the Olorun away from him. Instead of the Olorun, we get to see the Soul, and I think the Soul's a much better pick into the Anhur. Finishes out their top picks with Set, Cerberus for the Dragons, and we're going into the second phase bans with Raijin, Opwash, Cirquet, and Hunbots banned. Dragons looking for their most likely, I'll leave it open a little bit that maybe the Aphrodite is going mid, but most likely jungle mid, and they can't repeat the Pele. They opt for the Erlang Shen.
How do you like the Erlang Shen, right? Like the taunt we've seen be powerful, his autos are pretty solid, but like it definitely feels like he's in a weird spot right now where he's powerful as long as he gets ahead.
Yeah, and I mean that's always kind of been Erlang's
that's true of
thing.
everybody too as well.
That's true, yeah. Erlang is a god that you kind of need to get ahead on or you're going to be a lot less effective. I'm a big fan of Erlang right now because I think jungle is not a role that needs to be carrying late game. I think jungle is a role that needs to get your team ahead like LASBRA did last game. If he gets those 3 kills early games and then he does 9,000 damage total through the rest of the game, I'm fine with that. You did your job. You got your team this early lead. It's on your mid, your ADC, even sometimes your soul laner to play around that. And with a Charon lock-in, that leaves open Athena solo then.
Yeah, do you like Charon? Because I know there was some discussion about Charon because like the way his build, a lot of supports were like, you want to get Chronos Pennant, like you want to get power on this guy. Do you think he can flex over to solo, or do you think that he's better if you keep him in the duo lane?
Yeah, I think he can flex over to solo lane.
Is it good?
Is it good? Yeah, it's a different discussion. I would prefer Athena going over there. It's so easy to interrupt Cerbs. 2 can kind of just taunt him out of it. And then not really a lane you're worried about dying in. Yes, there's always potential that you get ganked, but Athena's going to live those ganks pretty easily. Charon on the other side, not too easily. I would prefer this Athena in solo, Charon support. It's a little still... This Levi's comp has kind of completely switched up from last game. Last game it was a super defensive comp. They had the Ama, Baba, Olorun. They want to play really, really front-to-back type of style Smite. This game, it's nearly the exact opposite. We have a dive character, Set, Thor, Charon, Athena all pretty much want to play dive, and then Sol's a very self-sufficient backliner, so Panda's going to be a little bit by himself this game, but a complete switch up in comps by the Levi.
I was real confused for a moment there.
Wait.
And actually might end up being more confused because it swapped from Kumba to Susano, which does not tell me anything.
Who's mid?
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Do you throw... And look, I'm reaching deep into the pockets here inbound. Like, I'm talking nothing. Well, I guess Afro was technically meta back in the day with Chanka. It was way, 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 way back when. But, like, Afro solo, is that a thing that you could get away with, especially if you're going against, like, Athena or Charon, and then Serb support Susano mid? Is that what you're feeling?
Yeah, I mean, you could do that.
I guess I could click on this thing.
There's a few opportunities for that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't. Do you want to talk about it first?
Well, I'll let you have it, because I forgot. It's not something, they did this recently, too, so it's
did.
not like it's a new revelation.
It is not completely new. We've seen it a couple times. We are getting an Erlang mid by Dardez. And kind of changing up what I said, where Erlang is played for that early portion to kind of get you a lead. Erlang in mid, at least from what I've seen, I've obviously not been able to pay
We've had 2 total games of it in the SPL.
I've not been able to pay attention to scrims to see the entire upside of it, but he really is a god that's good at mitigating the mid lane 1v1, and Set is a god that wants to play to win that 1v1, and he will not be able to. And I'm pretty sure last time we saw this Erlang mid, it was into a Set also, and it's something where Set has to play the game kind of completely differently. He can't just, hunt the enemy mid laner through the entire game. Erlang does still play very well in 1v1s. He's got mitigation and ult, damage reduction in his 1. He has a little bit of sustain, good CC, shielding, attack speed. He's got a lot of stuff in his kit for this 1v1. So it makes a little bit of sense. Does the, Dragons comp have enough damage through it with this Erlang in mid? I mean, Afro, not a ton of damage. Serb, not a ton of damage. We saw the Erlang, still not a ton of damage. So that's kind of my biggest question with this comp is, do they have enough to damage if the game is not them snowballing super hard to win the late game 5v5s?
Well, at least I would say that's better than the other half, which is normally when Aphrodite gets locked in, we almost are always sitting there thinking, okay, but where's, like, your CC? Who's your engage?
True.
Like, at least they have that, right? So they've got it elsewhere. But the question now is, did they trade the CC engage for the follow-up damage, which is going to be determined soon.
Something else they just gave us the answer to is the solo laner.
Yeah.
It is not going to be Athena solo. We're going to get the Charon solo, which, correct me if I'm wrong, we have not seen a Charon solo yet. There was rumblings about Charon in scrims when he originally came out. I don't think we saw him.
We haven't seen a whole lot of him, really.
It's just support, really.
But
Fino played him once.
Which
what we
makes
heard.
sense if Fino's playing him again, and that's going to be where they're going for it. If he made it work one time, we can try to find out if he can make it work again. It's Game 2, Leviathans down 1, and a nice surprise. We'll see how Game 2 goes for him as we jump down to the casters.
Jade Dragons trying to put themselves on set point. Leviathans trying to tie things up here. And some interesting picks to do it on. You've got Frog, you've got Trelly, you've got Doug joining us on the battleground. And, man, I saw the start picks in Mans, Trelly, and I saw Yemoja banned away, and I was like, that's a good ban. I'm glad they took Yemoja away. And then they picked Athena. I was like, we've seen a lot of Athena before. Pretty normal pick. And then the Dragons first picked insta-locked Aphrodite, and I didn't feel the same way about the Aphrodite as I felt about the Athena.
In what way?
I don't rarely agree with Myth, but
I know that's right.
In this instance, Myth is a known Aphrodite hater.
I believe in his own words, a certified. He says a lot more, but
yeah.
Aphrodite hater. Yeah.
Right. I err a little bit on that side. I'm not convinced that it is. Maybe it'll get value. I'm not convinced that it's first pick value.
Okay, well, here's my take on the Aphrodite.
Okay.
I think that, first of all, I tend to agree. But I like the Aphrodite when you have multiple hard carries to attach to. Now, what I see, the Susano, that checks one box. But the Anhur, not so much. Not really a hard carry. And the Erlang, if you're going to build full damage, I suppose could be. The ability is certainly there, but more often than not, everyone's going 2-3 defense items on Erlang. So if it's just the Susano, not my favorite. However, I do think that the Jade Dragons saw game number 1, and they said, hey, Mike was on Yemoja, and that sustain came in real clutch. We need more sustain. Which, if that's the case, there's other picks. Again, the sustain does not have the impale. Beautiful turn, and Coast actually takes a lot of damage. Man, that was close to being the first blood, but the immediate heal as well as the shell is certainly going to help out. Either way, it seems like the Jade Dragons are really favoring that sustain, and that's probably the reason they went to this Aphrodite so early, because they're not getting it from a Yemoja anymore.
Yeah, they managed to hold on to the sustain. Beats burned from Dardez as we get some action in the dual lane and in the mid lane. In fact, might continue here. LASBRA has to pull back in for PandaCat. Needs a little bit more damage.
Oh, the impale!
My goodness, the impale!
Even Coast is shocked!
The snipe from Coast finds the first blood onto PandaCat. And the early rotation, the Jade Dragons once again on the board first.
If you guys aren't making the habit of checking face cams the second a kill comes through, you gotta get on it, because Coast's eyes lit up. Even he was like, wait, I killed there? That's crazy. The auto and the impale hitting at the same time. First blood for the Anhur. No beads onto PCat. He's gonna have to play extremely safe for quite some time. And honestly, remember how low Coast got? The sustain from the Aphrodite definitely helps get you that extra damage. So, shouts out to Mike, as well as Coast hitting just about everything to confirm that first blood.
Yeah, I want to see what Coast was seeing, because he must have hit some sort of snipe.
It was auto impale at the same time.
There.
Yeah.
Something has to happen. He just like weaves
Bang, bang.
it right, man. Right next to each other, and Coast is shocked, but he grabs the first blood. And certainly giving a lead to that Anhur is going to feel good over on in that dual lane. We thought we might see some aggression, and we are indeed seeing that aggression early on. PBM, in fact, pops the frenzy here at 2 minutes into the game, confirms the steal for VaporishCoast and the rest of the Dragons. And they, looks like they're going to walk away scot-free. I say that, though. Sheento is over from the mid lane. The taunt from Ronngyu. Thought there might be follow-up. Good self-peel there from Coast. They're not able to answer back.
Coast has been on point with that impale, man. Not so much as confirming the kills, which we just saw, and of course that counts as well, but for peel. If you remember how many times Adapting tried to gank him last game, those impales really did stop a lot of that aggression. This time around, same call. I think he was all right. Regardless, it didn't seem like Sheento had too much damage to try and chase down. Remember, he's only level 4, so no Kingslayer available. You're not going to get that infinite spawn of set clones. Either way, pushing him off of you at the impale is going to make sure that you're not in any trouble anyways. So good start here. Remember, the Leviathans do have Adapting on the Thor, that semi-global presence. So you got to look up towards the sky, or at least towards that Gold Fury pit, if you're going to be trying to get aggressive in this duo lane. Not easy to avoid that ultimate, especially on these, you know, immobile characters like Aphrodite, for example. You've got Undying Love, which is certainly going to help, but a well-placed wall doesn't really matter if you're immune for a couple seconds. You're going to be having to take the old scenic route to make sure you get out of trouble. Throw the Athena into the mix, and now you have to look everywhere. Ronngyu has the ability to just ult to whichever teammate he so chooses if more ganks happen. And I think that's the real reason that Athena has been so annoying for these teams to deal with. Is you think you've got a 1v1, you think you've got a 2v2, or you think that Nika's getting ganked, and then why not send Ronngyu over?
Yeah, send everybody over. And Nika, first to fall for the Dragons. That's where I was going to go. The dual lane matchup may be something that we've seen before, but I mean, we've got an interesting one in the mid lane and an interesting one over on the solo side. This Charon solo. Not something that we've seen too often. I think they mentioned on the desk, fineokay was the one to pull this out when we saw it in the past at all. And of course, you're going to bring, you know, the standard frontline dive stuff. He's certainly going to be a tank. But, I mean, what is the driver behind this Charon solo?
Well, Charon has ridiculous amounts of poke damage, right? He's got so much range for a Guardian. And yeah, it's a lot of, you know, CC and protection for his team, like the shielding. But if you build just, I think the old build when Charon first came out was like the Glad Shield. You're just going to get a ridiculous amount of poke damage. If you build a Chronos Pen and go into whatever burst damage you really would like, and then still stay relatively tanky, Charon can really stack up the poke, and that can be annoying to try and deal with. As we've already seen, that's that River of Styx as well. Great CC to start off a fight, or just chuck it across the map. If your team is fighting near Gold Fury or something like that, you have the ability to really use it how you so choose. So I think it's going to be not the greatest matchup into the Cerberus. You can stun out the Ghastly Breath, but they're not looking for... You're not picking it because, oh, I counter Cerberus. You're picking it because you want to do Guardian things throughout the rest of the matchup. You're just going to be going pretty much even with a Cerberus, as I can imagine. But hey, Nika already died once, so maybe I'm incorrect about that one.
That's an ultimate in from adapting. Gets the taunt from the ultimate from Dardez as well. And a couple of traded abilities there. The wave slowly rolls over the mid lane.
I don't think it's going to hit.
It might. I don't know if they back up in left lane, but they're going forward. Oh my goodness, PandaCat. He just barely gets into that immune form.
It's so slow.
The wave, it's already, can we see the cooldown on fineokay's ultimate? Like, it's just already almost back up at this point.
Yeah, another 50 seconds or so, he'll have another one.
And he can do it again. It's just half the ultimate is the travel time across the map. No, some aggression from the Dragons. They try to grab onto PandaCat, and an ult from adapting there in mid as well. They try to focus on a Dardez. And that's another matchup that we haven't really talked about, right? The Erlang Shen mid, which I think Bobby rightfully points out on the desk. Something that is maybe a particular counter into this set. Just oh, you're gonna pick set. You wanna fight out my mage? I'll just pick another auto attacker and just 1v1 you.
Yeah, it's not gonna be great for trying to find solo kills, but you know, I think that you're picking the set for that great poke and then that late game all in. So it's not like Sheento is kicking himself or picking the set. He's just going, okay, I'm not going to be able to fight Dardez, and that's fine. There's nothing too wrong with that. Pulled the beads off of Dardez with that ultimate from adapting a bit ago. And that means that for a while, Dardez is going to have to play back, play safe. This Erlang Shen needs that beads to really function with how much CC is on the side of the Leviathans. But you haven't been going in, right? The Jade Dragons haven't been looking for too much engage with that 2v2. Pretty much by themselves for now. I remember around 12 minutes, that's when we saw these solo laners rotate out last time, right when the beacon spawns in. I believe it was just Nika and fineokay stayed in lane. Considering the Leviathans have a bit more pressure, wouldn't be surprised if both Guardians or none of them make the rotation out. It's all about, you know, keeping that teleport timer up perfectly. If you want to upgrade it, you're going to want to do it now before you have the chance to waste it when that beacon spawns in. And neither Nika nor fineokay have put it in. Actually, Dardez is trying to bait for his team. LASBRA's here. Just going to use that 9 turns blessing. And hey, you didn't have the bead, so I'd say he got out pretty easy.
Yeah, under some pressure. I think the taunt a little bit off the mark there from Ronngyu, so they don't manage to find the damage they need. Onto the mid laner. But the lead in this one, pretty even. The Jade Dragons, they have not gotten out to the early lead that we saw them benefit from in game number 1. Instead, taking things a little bit slower. I think no surprise from the composition that they've opted to go into, especially with these Guardians in solo. You mentioned maybe we get something around the 12-minute mark. Maybe they're just satisfied to farm up. Wait until the team fight phase where we can actually get this 5-on-5 and the Guardians are going to get a little bit more value from that. Excuse me. I wonder where we see the action start, though. I mean, is it 12 minutes and is it the macro plays around these neutral objectives? Last time we saw a Gold Fury pull and nobody was there, and then a Pyromancer pull and nobody was there, and then it happened another time, and they were just like snuck away before anybody really tried to find these fights in any sort of official capacity. Do you expect something similar to that, or is it more likely that we see a fight before those objectives just get snuck away?
I mean, adapting just sat in the fire pit for a solid 20 seconds looking for an ultimate, so he wants to get aggressive. He wants to find an Anvil of Dawn. It just doesn't seem like the Jade Dragons are giving it to him. I mean, Nika is smart, knows not to step up in this lane. There's really no reason to. You're not fighting Charon, and if you're not getting Charon weak, then there's no reason to really step forward. Because of that, LASBRA has the ability to get active on the left side of the map, and that's sort of where he's been chilling. In fact, he's in duo lane as we speak, just stealing away some farm, or sitting and waiting for PandaCat to walk forward. Point being, I would think whether it's the Leviathans getting active or not, the next kill that happens is going to be around this Thor. Whether it's adapting, ulting in late, or ulting to start the fight, that's my guess. It seems like he's getting antsy. I mean, he sat, again, 20 seconds of just sitting around waiting for someone to walk into your range. Tells me he wants to send this ultimate off. But it's just so much easier going for Nika, who doesn't have beats. Everyone else, except for LASBRA now, has beads up. That beads is down for a solid 2 minutes or so, a little bit more. And LASBRA has to step forward if he wants to defend this beacon in that time. That's going to be a good target for adapting if he can find him.
Yeah, LASBRA, I mean, he just did essentially the same thing. I think he sat on that column in dual lane for a solid 15-20 seconds just waiting to see if PandaCat would push up the lane. But both junglers waiting for opportunities that are closer to 80% plus, right? Guaranteed gank opportunities. Instances where they have an advantage as opposed to trying to force something a little bit closer to a 50-50 because they're thinking, if they don't hand something to us, we're confident in our scaling. We're confident in how we are going to make up in these fights late game. That being said, adapting, you might be right. The fight looking to start around him. They will force Nika off a little bit. I mean, regardless of where these engagements look to happen and where the all-in comes from, one thing consistent to me, adapting has not stopped looking, and Ronngyu has not stopped looking. They're constantly trying to find somebody out of position.
Adapting might be trying to go in for the ult here. He's nearby. He will, and he finds Dardez, but Mike's here, has the Undying Love if he so chooses. He's trying to hold on to it. It looks like Sheento might go in for the chase, though.
Defender of Olympus following up on the set. The ultimate channeled there from PBM. Good peel from the jungler, though, and I don't know that they have the finishing touch. Sheento cannot find the last hit onto PBM, and they just have so many disengage tools. That's what you get with this Aphrodite, and I think they got the beacon, but nobody falls.
Yep, the Jade Dragons stick around. You'd think too long, but that ultimate was not enough. Adapting goes in by himself. The follow-up was a little ways away. Sheento was able to get there, but at that point, Undying Love was able to get everyone away from the Kingslayer, and that means that the Jade Dragons, they'll be happy with that. They take their beacon, they don't have to overcommit. Unless the Leviathans pull this Gold Fury in the next 30 seconds or so, it's not going to be for any other reason, right? You don't have to kick yourself about using all your ultimates and not picking anything up, because the farm has not changed. It's just that extra damage, the extra buffs that the Jade Dragons were able to grab for themselves thanks to that beacon. Still a very low kill game. And usually it's low kills but not low fighting. This has been pretty much both. That was the only scrap that we've seen so far. Not for a lack of, ganks being sent out, just for a lack of anyone even stepping forward. I would say more often than not, it's been the Jade Dragons in aggressive positioning, and now they're going for the most aggressive position they can go for, pulling the Gold Fury with not a Leviathan in sight.
Yeah, not a Leviathan in sight. I'm not convinced that they know this is actually, I think the word vision is theirs. Yeah, that's they knew that was happening the whole time, but the Jade Dragons, they find the perfect timing where everybody has backed. Now, though, positioning, blink in, pull in onto two there, and Ronngyu, he's the focus off the bat. Sheento fighting LASBRA on the other side, and the action just explodes across the map. You need to find the autos. Coast! He needs to hit something, finally. Finds it. You see him in the player cam talking a little bit of trash. Finds the solo kill onto PandaCat after so long of waiting for some action. VaporishCoast, as soon as the supports leave, you find PandaCat stepping up, a solo kill on the Anhur.
2-0, and Coast pops off, deserved. I just see Dardez with that smile on his face. You know he could just hear him popping off, and now, hey, Fury's down. Why not go in for a Pyromancer? fineokay's got some good poke to try and dissuade the Jade Dragons, and they will. They'll back up with just their small win for now. Getting the better end of that trade, though, is a big deal. Getting to push some waves under means that adapting has to rotate over to duo lane. He has to try and grab some extra farm. And I just want to highlight how that all starts. I mean, Dardez goes in for a 9 turns blessing. Doesn't really find it. There wasn't much action to have there. But the difference is they put all their pressure onto Sheento, who just gets out for free, right? I mean, this set is not easy to try and track down. LASBRA put the teleport on, chase him down. They don't really get much for that fight. Luckily, Coast was able to find that 1v1, because if not, there wasn't really much for the Jade Dragons to pick up. You know, putting all of your damage into Sheento and just letting him sandstorm away doesn't feel too good.
Is LASBRA using the Atlantis Leviathans Susano skin?
Yeah, man, he's a big fan.
Let's
Big Leviathans fan.
Big Leviathans fan from the Susano. Well, he's over here. He's telling PandaCat how much of a fan he is, trying to force out that safety, and will do so. Don't think he wants to take the full-on 1v1. Will just get that ability out of PandaCat. The objectives, only 2 stand on the map right now. They're both on that right side. I think it was a pretty early Fire Giant that we saw in game number 1 where Jade Dragons just decided that they were done waiting and that they just wanted to coin flip the objective around 20 minutes. A very different composition, though, this time around. They don't have that same shred. They don't have the op-wash coming from solo. So I'm not sure they're going to be as willing to try and step up and force something around that same early time frame in this game.
Yeah, I mean, Dardez goes Executioner early for that extra shred for the physicals on his team, but I think you're probably right. Even with the sustain that PolarBearMike is going to provide, not going to be easy. Nika, never in any danger there, especially if it's not an Anvil of Dawn that is going to initiate that gank. So the Cerberus just gets to leap away for the time being. Do we get to see another 1v1 attempt? No, won't play fair. Bring in the Defender of Olympus, and Coast is going to try and fight it anyways.
Yeah, 3v1 is what it turns into. Coast gets a lot of damage off, but no chance. That'll leave the opening, though, on the right-hand side of the map. The Pyromancer under pressure here. The ultimate look for the steal, and fineokay, he at least pulls him off the objective. But the damage, it's there onto the Charon, and it looks like it's gonna be enough, but the ultimate comes through, and everybody has to back off. The damage, finally, enough onto fineokay, and they get the 1-for-1 trade across the map. Adapting, and Ronngyu looking for the pressure, but PBM, not the one they want to find the damage onto. The Leviathans, fineokay just does just enough to pull them off the objective, but it's a 1-for-1 in the end.
Yeah, the big difference there is that PandaCat's able to split push, though. He needed to catch up, and he has been able to grab the tier 1 tower and push a couple waves under, which is going to help him try and catch up to VaporishCoast while he was dead because of that 3-man gank. You're pretty upset if you're Coast there. I mean, the Jade Dragons, you got to think, Ronngyu ulted over to left and was still able to make it back over to right to help out that Pyromancer. Sheento as well. It took a little bit too long to try and going in for that pull. Great plays by fineokay and adapting to stall out to make sure the rest of the team gets there. Because trading Coast for Pyromancer, you're not happy about it, but it's okay, right? It ends up being worth it in the long run. Trading Coast for all those extra waves in duo, PandaCat gets some free farm, and you don't even have to give up Pyromancer. That's going to be a big win for the Levi's.
PandaCat rotated over for this time. Pyromancer and Taunton, ultimate expended as well. The ultimate comes through in trade, though, and Nika pulls in Ronngyu. Dardez left alone on the backside, though, not linked, but it finally gets there, is able to trade out, and the junglers fall on either side. Sheento winning the 1v1 in the mid lane will take down LASBRA in trade. And the Leviathans back down. Nobody takes the Pyromancer, another 1-for-1.
And that's going to be both relics from adapting, though. Finds a decent ultimate, but immediately gets turned on by Dardez. That's going to be some scary stuff. Pyromancer is back up. fineokay helped to stop this last time, but it seems like the Jade Dragons really do want to commit here. Frenzy pop. They should have the burst unless a steal attempt. No, the Jade Dragons pick that one up, and now Mike has a runic bomb in pocket. This is stalled out for so long, though. The PandaCat goes right and Sheento goes left. Both just getting some split push down with that tier 1 tower dropping. It's going to mirror the gold. The runic bomb is the real prize, depending on what Mike does with it, but Oni Fury's already back up. It's been such a long time since we saw that pulled. It has already respawned with not too much fighting since then. Because the game's relatively even, I guess burst-wise, you're going to give the favor over to PandaCat pretty heftily. I mean, that Supernova does have some incredible confirmed. But even with that, not easy to just go in for a 50-50. PandaCat's going to start it up. Maybe Coast can show up in time, but it's not going to be easy.
It's going to be a little bit more heavily weighted than a 50-50. Probably closer to a 100-0 on that Oni Fury pull from the Leviathans. They'll grab the neutral objective. They will lose out on the Pyromancer, but I mean, everything stays even. And at the 20-minute mark in this one, 7 kills total, a 600 gold difference between these two teams, give or take. And the question has to be asked, what may be the breaking point in some of these 5v5s? We've seen some scraps. Now I think a couple big groupings around those Pyromancers, and we get 2 1-for-1s in a row, right? That gives the teams maybe a window into how these fights could or could not go. But if you're, looking at the engage for the Leviathans, the engage for the Dragons, what is the difference you want to make in these fights to try and make something break in your favor?
I mean, it's just so easy for the Leviathans when you have an Athena. You don't have to think about your engage too much. Add a Thor into the mix and it becomes even simpler, right? You just have the wall, the dash taunt. You're not too worried about how the fight is going to start. It's more so how it's going to end, which the Jade Dragons have to deal with as well. Sure, Dardez can just find an ultimate, and that has been the call recently. Just look for a 9 turns blessing and see what you can find. Coast taunted in, holds on to the beads, but takes a lot of damage because of it.
Trigger Discipline allows for the Relic, but I don't know if it'll benefit him here. Sheento, he's looking for the dive, and the Relics come through. The ultimate as well from the Aphrodite. So much expended from the Levi's, and they don't get anything.
Huge.
In fact, they get punished for it. Ronngyu and Sheento both sent to the gray screen, and the counter engage from the Dragons is beautiful, just enough to keep Coast alive, and that might be the window for the FG.
And that is ridiculous. LASBRA trying to find the 1v2, will get it. Can fineokay clean this one up? I don't think so. LASBRA should have the cooldowns. All the while, Dardez is just zoning out, adapting. He's going to try and die him here, pulls the Aegis. Can you get any other damage? I don't think so. The hammer should be up, but adapting.
Oh!
Where's it at? He gets the kill, and Dardez says, are you kidding me? Look at his eyes.
Dardez gets traded out an overcommittal from the mid laner on the
Dardez
Jade
had beads?
Dragons. He had beads the whole time
pre-beats that
and
stun?
opts not
What?
to use them and loses the 1v1 on the tower. Oh, sheesh, man.
That is a, aw shucks, that is a big throw.
It's an aw shucks, but I mean, you got to look at the bigger picture. Look at the bigger picture. You're holding on to Fire Giant on 4.
Could be 5.
Could be 5. Could be 5. It could be worse, Trelly. It could be worse.
I suppose. All right, let's dial it back.
It could
'cause
be better.
I didn't break down that chase at all. I mean, beautiful taunt. I was talking about how easy it is to engage, and we saw that, right? Dash taunt on the coast. He says, I'm not going to relic here. And I thought it was a bit of a mistake. He jumps out immediately. fineokay channels the River of Styx, sends it down. Coast says, okay, I can immune that with Desert Fury. I'll just ult it. Then here comes Sheento. He goes, maybe I shouldn't have held my relics for so long. Beads and Aegis the Skewer. Says, I'm terrified. Even more chase down. That's where the Aphrodite comes into play. Your beads and Aegis are down. He said, I got you. Undying Love. Guess what? Nika's got the Stygian Torment. Double pull. Easy double kill. The only negative in that whole engagement was the fact that Dardez just didn't pre-beats the stun and get the freest kill of his life. I mean, even LASBRA chases down PandaCat and gets the 1v2.
Burns the relics too.
Yeah, and that's such a negative thing, looking at the one negative of the fight when everything Jade Dragons just comes up. But still, could have been perfect. But
Could have been perfect. Could have been perfect.
And I'm not doing my job if I don't analyze the coulda, shoulda, wouldas.
No, absolutely. I think we can't take Dardez. I think we should hover Dardez's beads cooldown timer for the rest of the match, just to make sure that we know he's utilizing that relic when he needs to. Either way, though, Fire Giant around the belts of 4 out of 5 of the Jade Dragons members. And we can talk about their siege a little bit. Of course, they don't have the standard mage, so maybe their siege defense would struggle a little bit, but they're on the offense. They've got the ADC, they've got the runic bomb there. They'll take down the tier 2 in mid with relatively no fight back from the Levi's. It looks like they're hesitant to even, maybe they'll push down the tier 1 and the tier 2 and right, but I think just playing it slow, playing it disciplined, trying to build up a little bit of that global gold, not going to try and force anything too hard.
What is LASBRA doing? He's been sitting here for a while. I'm guessing he thinks someone's going to split push or invade that green buff. Yeah, I think that was his call. He had been sitting at that green buff for a while. And when you see the whole enemy team pushing, I guess usually the play is let's go get some free farm, so you head over to left. Not going to happen. Not when the Titans are out. The Leviathans are forced to be here to try and defend their Titan. All the while the Jade Dragons can whittle it down slowly but surely, as LASBRA and Nika sort of defend the jungle and make sure no one is slipping away. Not going to be a bad look so far, but now that you have the Titan actually help you, on this defense. Got to keep your eyes on the sky, though. As we just saw, Adapting does have plenty of damage as a level 20 Thor. The issue is you don't want to use Anvil of Dawn just to get Undying Loved, right? You want to have those relics down before you go in, and it looks like already the taunt comes through.
Yeah, fineokay having an engagement there, but Sheento, he's been left alone on the back of the fight. Adapting finds Nika, and everything is split. They fight on opposite sides of the tier 2 tower, and Coast, he trades one back, but it's a 1-for-2, and the Levi's, by splitting up the fight, they've found themselves an advantage. Dardez trying to re-engage and onto PandaCat, but forced away with the damage, and the Jade Dragons have to back up after losing 2.
Does their Titan get the last hit, though? It does. The tier 2 will fall down thanks to that Titan. I didn't hate that call, right? The beginning of that fight does start with Ronngyu dashing in, finds the taunt, Adapting goes up to the skies a bit later. The real issue is the fact that LASBRA and Dardez were so deep trying to find that kill onto Sheento. Remember, he doesn't have Aegis, he has Bead Shell, but the Bead Shell was enough to survive. All the while, you're losing an unweighted fight in the backline because you've got 2 diving Sheento. So Leviathans play their odds, end up winning that fight, getting Fire Giant, just wasting that timer. You're okay with getting the tier 2, but LASBRA, you might be stuck. Everyone's around.
Yeah, nobody is here to save
comes
out
the wave.
LASBRA, and the wave is on its way. It will secure the pick onto the jungler, the Jade Dragons. And now a 5 versus 4 man advantage on the map for the next 60 seconds or so. And that'll be right as this Fire Giant spawns as well. Primal Fury surely will go down here to the Leviathans. And I wonder if they try to force something early while they have this man advantage. Look, everybody instantly backs. If they head towards the Fire Giant right now, they might be able to pick it up still 5 versus 4.
Yeah, LASBRA, 25 seconds, can get there quickly. This is going to be on the Jade Dragons to try and stall this one out until LASBRA can show himself. Blink ult up from Nika. Still some decent damage. It's not going to be easy, and because they're stopping a farm, I don't think their plan is to just burn this as quickly as possible. There is still a Runic Bomb for PBM, but yep, Rongyu's going to start this one up. LASBRA will be nowhere in sight for the time being. It's up to the rest of the Dragons to try and defend.
A lot of relics still down here. This is a fight balanced on a knife's edge. Spawned up now is LASBRA. He's got to make his way towards the Fire Giant, but Ronngyu and the rest of the Levi's hop off of the objective. Don't want to play the coin flip today, just as LASBRA spawns, thinks smart not to try and force something. And importantly, they'll probably wait a couple of seconds here, and all of these relics are going to come back online. The ADC's 30 seconds away. The mid laner's just about to get these beads back online. And everything sort of returns back to this neutral state. Last time, it was LASBRA getting picked out on this left side, but he's been doing this all game.
Yep.
He's been sitting here in these weird spots all game. And the last time, it netted him PandaCat. I'd like to think the Levi's have sort of learned from that mistake.
You'd think so. Sheento would be the one to walk up. I'm not even sure you have full 100-0 potential by yourself towards Sheento, especially if he's got that shell and his ultimate available. But I don't hate the call, right? Just in case someone walks up who you can 1v1. It's not a bad time, especially when you know for a fact that no one is pulling Fire Giant, which the Leviathans are not for now. They're stepping forward, though. They have the ward coverage. fineokay has been on point with sticking around to make sure these wards don't drop, and they haven't. I'm thinking this is going to be EFG territory. Yeah, 40 seconds away and no one pulling this anytime soon means that almost certainly we're going to be fighting over an enhanced Fire Giant. Taking stock of the fight, though, it's still been a lot of Ronngyu just dashing forward, trying to pull something. And something that we don't consider too much is the awkward, should I beads or should I wait for Mike to ult me situation when you're linked to an Aphrodite. If you hesitate for any bit too long, sometimes you could just die because you made that mistake, right? You're like, should I Aegis here? Am I gonna have Undone Love? That's something that Mike has to communicate. Hey, if you get taunted, I got you. I'm gonna immune that. Or we'll see if PandaCat uses the ult off of that. Things you gotta watch out for. And this is it. Dash charged up. Does Ronngyu find a target, or is he just waiting to see who he can get?
PBM linked to Coast and has remained linked to Coast for the majority of this game. You mentioned early on you're going to want to be linking to a hard carry, but at this point, with how long Coast survived the last time that we saw that dive come through, I think it's caused Adapting to be a little bit more hesitant with these ultimates. If you have a target, you want to be able to guarantee that target is dying, and with all the disengage buttons that the Jade Dragons have, this Aphrodite, the relics coming through for all the characters involved. I mean, everybody has the weight of their game, the weight of this game, it feels like, on the shoulders of just one pick. Just one person falls, and you start to open up the question marks of you know, who is willing to pull that Fire Giant, who is willing to play the closer to 50-50. fineokay, though, he might be the early damage here. Forces a shell out, and the ultimate from fineokay, but nobody's really here to follow up onto Dardez. It will be the ultimate, and everybody turns onto Sheento. He's forced to retreat in the ultimate, and just barely the damage. Not enough yet, but it will be enough to find the mid laner, and the body blocks for Ronngyu. The Jade Dragons, they wait it out one more time, and they find 2 again.
Puzzling fight there, but it doesn't seem like the Jade Dragons are done. They're going to siege forward. Dardez has to be careful. Doesn't have too much sustain here. He's going to be up to adapting. Still has ultimate, still has both relics. It seems like Phoenix is going to drop a do. The Jade Dragons going for the end call. Yeah, I don't like that either. With adapting, still having that ultimate, probably time to back up. Still a puzzling thing to even try and fight, right? I mean, fineokay is a little bit caught out. I'm going to say a little bit because I'm pretty sure he never dies there. Pops the shell, just fearing the engage. And then tries to turn, uses that ultimate, I'm guessing expecting adapting and Sheento to come through. Doesn't work out, but now fineokay's got to make a big play here. The rest of the Dragons want to commit, but can they kill this Charon?
Yeah, they're looking for it. They're off the objective at this point. fineokay has to channel the safety, but it's not enough to keep him alive. And Dardez finds the last hit onto the Soul Laner. The rest of the Leviathans, they learn their lesson. And nobody wants to step up to defend this enhanced Fire Giant. Jade Dragons, this time, all 5 members have that EFG online. They're pushing down right lane.
Yeah, adapting still didn't ult. I mean, I think he was hesitant there. You want to get the Fire Giant a bit lower. Maybe expected fineokay to live a bit longer, but because he goes down, gets to hold on to it. This right side bird, an afterthought. No, there will be no defense for the right side Phoenix. But fineokay being gone is not enough to say, hey, we're going in for the Titan. That's a bit of a risky call. We've seen how that can go, especially with the setup with ultimate. So you want to try and defend. You want to go in for the Pyromancer. Jade Dragons are playing this one smart. Still one more tier 2 tower to go through as well. So there's a bit more gold. As far as upgrades, not too much. I mean, LASBRA's got some glyphs he could go for. Dardez, same sort of way, as well as just Mike needed to sell his starter, or I guess the recipe rather. It doesn't seem like he just got a Magi's Shelter picked up. So gold's still a little bit more impactful up until this point. Now you're just focused on siege. You got 2 Phoenixes down. Fire minions will be sieging forward in those lanes. And it does seem like with a solid 3 minutes left, breaking the base is going to be the easy part. It's all about that Titan siege with, I'd say, the Leviathans have decent attempts to try and keep alive. They're wave clear. Not the best, but it's that sustain. It's once you get those ultimates, if you can really chain adapting and Sheento's ults together, that's your best bet of the defense.
They've got the power to set up sort of a, like, everything comes all at once, right? They've got this Oni Fury that can make these fire minions even more enhanced than they're already going to be. So they'll have those waves pushing down in mid and in right, although PandaCat, he's found a little bit of a split push opportunity. Will take down that tier 2 tower. And in fact, he's
going back.
Keep pushing. No, oh, well, they're sending them back, but this is assault. They're going to lose this right-hand Phoenix. Nobody gets back in time. They may find PandaCat for it. They'll chase him out. But Sheento, what a bait! LASBRA has no idea! And the dash in from Sheento, it will be enough to find the kill. The Leviathans, they've got 4 people.
They're base racing.
Oh my goodness, in the base, they've got 2 for the Dragons, but Nika and Dardez are back here.
No, they're
looking for the fight.
That's
they're
Dragons.
on to the Dragons. They're killing the Titan. And the Levi's, they try to fight back, but the Jade Dragons up 2-0.
Yeah, Coast built full pen. His build was made for shredding Titans there. The second we saw that Titan damage go down, you got to think of how many towers were up as well. I love that Sheento was hiding. That was a perfect play. LASBRA walks forward, goes, oh, it's just PandaCat we can chase down. Sheento comes out of the woodwork, you get the pick. The issue is when you overstay for the end call. If you get that pick, get out, you've thwarted a bit of the EFG push. But when you try to base race and Anhur with attached to an Aphrodite, that's when you bit off more than you could chew.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the entire game plan for the Jade Dragons there is just punish game.
Yep.
Right? They're just waiting for the Levi's to make a mistake. And sure enough, the Levi's made maybe like 2 big team fight mistakes, and that's all they needed, it felt like.
Yep, and I do think that having the confidence to play through Coast has been pretty big for the Jade Dragons as well. Getting a solo kill, Mike attached to him and said, I'm not leaving this guy's side. Like, you guys go, I am attached to this Anhur for the rest of the game.
The roster change benefiting the Jade Dragons, to be sure. They're up 2-0 against the Levi's. We'll be right back for Game 3.
Yes, I'm grooving.
Dragons win game 2, and inbound they find themselves in the scariest position for the Jade Dragons.
Wow.
They are up 2-0. And you know, it's one of those things that, like, a little bit of Mimi, a little bit of serious in there,
Little bit
though.
of truth
like,
there.
It has been an unfortunate spot for them several times when they're up 2-0. That game 3 falls apart. Game 4 falls apart, and then, whether Game 5 goes their way or not, but they end up at Game 5, right? And so the question is this new reinvigorated Dragons from Game 1 and Game 2 going to continue? We'll answer that one in a little bit. What we should be looking at, maybe first and foremost, is how well Game 2 goes for them. Originally, pretty damn well, and then some bumps start up with the Levi's fighting back, but eventually they get everything back on track, a nice Fire Giant, and they get the game.
Yeah, a bit of a slower early portion to this game than the first one, not dominated by the Dragons, but a little bit in control of the Dragons, if you had to say. The first 20 minutes goes to one team. It's definitely the Dragons. Coast over in duo lane has done a lot for this role specifically. He has been putting on a performance so far. He had this solo really clean play, forces out double relics, and is able to pick up the 1v1 kill. And he actually gets the Athena ult out here too at the beginning portion of it, or at the end portion of it. Overall, Coast is looking great, and it seems like just a vibe you get from watching like their room and before they get into games. There just seems to be a lot more like confidence, and Coast brings you a lot of confidence. There's very few men in the SPL that are as confident as Coast, and you can see in the way he plays, the way he positions. This end call right here, not a doubt in their mind were they not ending here, and I mean it's really not that close.
And it's actually really impressive, especially considering how many highlights we had that were Coast oriented. It makes sense when he's going 5-2-4 and soloing people, and specifically soloing PandaCat of all people. But the thing that really stands out to me is not Coast's performance, but the fact that after he did something similar at Worlds this last year, he almost didn't end up in the league. There were teams looking over him for other carries, things like that. I feel like it was a great pickup for the Hounds when they brought him in and had him on their team. And I think that it is an equally great pickup here for the Dragons if anything from these two games is to go by. It has been reinvigorating on the left side of the map or in the duo lane, right, for the Dragons. And so now the real question is, I guess, can they continue that level of play?
And I think we might have to touch on this Anhur pick. Is there too much that this Anhur has for Coast? He seems incredibly confident on it. He has a lot of aggressive capabilities on it. Curious if there's any ban here or maybe a pick away. Levi's taking first pick side. And we also have to talk about the Yemoja also. That's something that had to be banned away in Game 2. Game 3, a completely different game. You're down 2-0 in the series. Something needs to change. I think we look at this Anhur if I'm the Levi's.
We'll see if they shift it up. Amaterasu, which was something that the Levi's played in Game 1, banned in Game 2, now banning again in Game 3, as well as the Anhur. Wow,
there
okay. I honestly, you had mentioned it, you had talked about it, and the entire time I was thinking, yeah, but who's going to, like, in the top 3, there's so many good gods right now.
Yeah.
Who bans Anhur? The Leviathans! The Leviathans ban Anhur when they're up against the Dragons. At least force Coast to play something different, especially, I'm assuming that one maybe even oriented from PandaCat, where he said, guys, come on. Just get this guy out of my lane. We can beat the other stuff. Just make sure that this is limited. Athena ban as well coming out from the Dragons alongside the Chernobog. So one that is maybe a must ban. The other one up there after the performance from Ronngyu last game, and just in general what Athena can do, banned out. Rat joins the Leviathans for their top 3. And the Dragons have to make their option here. Yemoja is something that you had kind of highlighted.
Yemoja is definitely something they have to think about.
That
They've also seen
get rid of.
2 Kama bans so far, both by the Dragons. The Levi's have a lot of prio in that. Either they put it mid, Sheento's played it a couple times. They also really like it in jungle. It is left open. It is locked in by the Levi's. Over to the Dragon side. Curious to see if they still have that high prio on this Aphrodite. As I'm talking about it, it is locked in. Aphrodite is locked in again. Pele also, something we kind of missed on. Pele was the ban that they opted to drop to enter in that Anhur ban. So now we have Pele, Aphrodite, a whole lot of all-in, a lot of safety for this Pele that the Aphrodite grants. No Coast pick in the top 2 so far. Now it's kind of, where is this dual lane going to look at? Usually we've seen both dual lanes locked in super early. This time, all we're getting is one support for the Dragons. We have a lot of mage ADCs available. Beyond that, it seems like a lot of the ADCs or hunters are whoever you just want to play. There's not a next strongest hunter once Chernobog's banned, and with how good Anhur was, or Coast was on her, now it's time to see what is like that next hunter available, or are they going to go for a magical ADC?
Camazotz, as you had mentioned, a Leviathan just go-to, right? It has always been there for them. They have played, as long as I'm making sure to get the numbers fully right, it's 8 of these games, and they've won 6 of the Camazotz games. That's not bad. Most recent loss was actually on Friday up against the Leviathans. Sorry, not against the Leviathans. They were the Leviathans, up against the Ferrymen. Otherwise, it is one of the most banned gods against them, and this is actually the first time they first picked it, but considering the win rate on it, I'm not going to be too surprised by it. Cerberus, Raijin alongside it. Honestly, it feels like the Leviathans came in and just chose a really solid top 3, and depending on where you slice it, the Morrigan Pele, really good, and Mike's Aphrodite as of late. I guess we have to give credit to it. Just got the win. I can't be as down on it as I maybe want to be because it's Aphrodite. It has looked good, and so it feels like a very strong 3 for the Jade Dragons specifically.
Yeah, I think Mike on this Aphrodite recently really needs to be kind of talked up a bit since it is talked down on a lot when he's not winning with it. He's looked fantastic on it. His team has looked fantastic around him. And when you're playing these different type of support picks, obviously Aphrodite's been meta in support almost this entire year. But it's not just something that the support has to get used to, it's something the team has to get used to playing around that as a support. And now it seems like the Dragons have finally came together to realize the strength of this Aphrodite, and they've been playing around it really well. Thor set bans for the Dragons, Cthulhu Heim for the Levis. Jade Dragons now have a solo lane ADC to look forward to. Coast, I'm curious to see, because we've seen it a little bit where ADCs sometimes get last picked so that they can dominate that 2v2 and also play safe for late game. So are the Dragons maybe going to be looking for that? Sorry, I think I said jungler. I meant solo laner is the one they need.
Yeah.
Are they going to be looking for that jungle or the solo counter pick or the ADC counter pick? Wukong locked in means they're putting a lot of their eggs in the basket of Coast. We want to get Coast a strong laning phase. We want to make sure he can live that late game. And Wukong's always going to be a safe solo lane pick. You're always going to be happy with that.
And that is the question right now, Coast. What's he going to go? Saving him for a last pick. This is where it also gets a little awkward because, like, when we've been talking carries lately, Anhur for Coast came up. Heimdall. All of the magical carries, though, are still available right now. And with Wukong, Pele, like, you can flex around in that regard. And he's going to wait to see what his matchup's going to be. Right now, we're seeing 2 hovered by the Leviathans. Both of them hunters at that. Hunters that we've seen and more or less know where they're going to go. I'm just trying to buy time to see if they actually lock them in, because the point I want to make is that AMC's being hovered. It gets locked in for Hercules, and what I was going to say is that we have not seen a whole lot of AMC, period, and when we have, it's been Marty taking his place anyway.
Yeah, and it's because of the... Basically, as you said, Marty is just a better AMC, but now that Marty's kind of been brought down, AMC does feel good to pick again. And a lot of flex potential on this Raijin. They were curious maybe putting the AMC in mid, Raijin solo. They do commit to the Raijin solo, or the Raijin mid, Herc solo. And last pick for the Jade Dragons is that Rama. So the 2v2 matchup of Aphrodite Rama versus probably Serb Hu Yi. Always potential for a Herc support, but I will say it's probably Serb support. Cerberus Hu Yi versus Rama Aphrodite. A not necessarily volatile matchup, but a matchup that if one of them does get a lead, there could be a lot of solos happening, and there could be a lot of aggressive plays to be happening in that lane.
I feel like, so Coast, as we know and have seen, and it's been pretty consistent, period, is going to try to find that fight, period. I feel like Ho Yi is the, okay, you really want to do this?
Yep.
Let's do this kind of god to pick up. Because, you know, it's been talked about a lot. We talk about, like, lane boxers. But Mark of the Golden Crow, it just makes Ho Yi the boxer. Like, he's the guy. And so at that point, it becomes who's hitting their autos more. And we saw one highlight from Coast where he misses a few. Still got the kill, but he misses a few. And so he's got his own in. If you're looking, like you said, duo lane, it feels like it could be very volatile. One person gets a lead, and then suddenly it's out of control. Do you think that's the same in any of the other lanes? Like, you know, if we're looking towards, like, Wukong Hercules, doesn't have that same vibe to it, really.
Yeah, I mean, Wukong Hercules. Herc is a pretty aggressive solo laner, but Wukong is the aggressive solo laner. There's nothing happening in this lane for the most part. Maybe he sets up ganks kind of well, but neither junglers really want to visit over here too much. I wouldn't be surprised if both Adapting and LASBRA actually just stay away from solo, other than maybe getting a blue or invading the first blue. Other than that, they've been sitting around, a lot around in mid. They've been going over to duo. A little bit in solo, but it seems like solo, they are just fine with kind of farming that lane out. Game 1, there was basically nothing over there. Game 2, there was a little bit more, but still not too much. So I think we've kind of figured out the meta of this set so far. It's duo lane is the most important. We need to win duo. We want to put a lot of eggs into that basket of duo lane. So I would not be surprised if both junglers put a lot of time, a lot of resources over there, along with both supports, honestly.
Plus, you get the balance. We haven't talked a lot about the Morrigan. But suddenly it's like, well, hey, Adapting's doing great on the Camazotz. Cool, we got a Camazotz. Oh, wait, LASBRA's doing great on the Pele? Cool, double Pele. Like, there's definitely a lot for the Dragons that can stack up. And I think saying LASBRA's doing good on the Pele has a good home here, considering what we saw from him in Game 1 on that pick.
Yeah, I mean, it's the reason they had to ban it in Game 2. He played so well in Game 1. Expecting to see another great game by LASBRA in Game 3.
Yeah, I'm just excited to see double Pele. If
Same.
it comes up, it's probably going to come up. We'll see. Can the Dragons do or die? They are up to 0. Leviathans backs against the wall. Let's find out how it shakes out in Game 3.
Leviathans backs up against the wall is right. The Dragons, they're trying to close things out here. And Trelly, you got to... It's still Frog, it's still Trelly, it's still Doug. I got a train of thought here, okay? And it's rock solid, but you got to follow me.
I'll let you spit. Go ahead.
Okay. Yesterday we were talking about Snoopy wanted to pick the Rama. We were thinking, man, it would be cool to have the Snama, right, in game.
Didn't know that was a thing, but go on.
And we got VaporishCoast here, and he picks the Rama. And I was thinking, man, what would we call that? Would it be the Vama, or would it just be Coast, and would it be the Kama? And then I realized there's a Kama on the other side. So there's 2 Kamas in this game.
So here's the thing, Frog, about me letting you cook. You know what? I'm not gonna knock you down a peg on air. I'll talk to you about it later. But
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm cooking.
I'm taking your oven mitts, bro. You don't get them anymore. I'm ordering out next time. As far as I'm concerned, the Coast Rama, I'm excited for. Yeah, it's gonna be some good stuff. But I'm not gonna call it the Kama. You can't make me.
That's okay. We'll call the actual Camazotz the Kama,
Yeah,
not the
that
Kama.
makes a lot of sense.
That makes a lot of sense.
a lot more sense.
ADC matchup is an interesting one for this game. Neither of these picks are ones that we see very often at all. And I know Gore mentioned on the desk that this is potentially a very boxing-heavy matchup. You get the Mark of the Golden Crow on the Huyi, and PandaCat wants to fight, but I mean, even before we get there, I'm looking at the lane pressure, and the Jade Dragons have it in spades.
Right. I mean, it's just very difficult. If Hou-Yi doesn't hit the triple bounce just right, and even if you do hit it just right, there are so many different ways those melee minions can move, and if your clear's not as quick, you get to lane slower, and Rama is attached to an Aphrodite, can just pop Wing Shard and just delete that first wave, which means you're stuck under tower for the majority of the early game. So I think this is going the exact way that the Jade Dragons would have expected it to go. It's just, PandaCat said, hey, I was on Sol, a magical ADC who doesn't have the greatest time in the 1v1. I got soloed last game. Give me Hou-Yi. Like, I'm not, this is not happening again. I think in the 1v1, it really does depend, but Hou-Yi with one lucky bounce can just win that trade for free, so Coast is going to have to watch out for that, and I wouldn't be surprised if PandaCat goes looking for it, because, again, he wants to try and right that wrong and try and get a kill himself, a solo kill himself. But pressure is going to be going the way of the Jade Dragons. They get shield buff without even a rotation from LASBRA, which means LASBRA can go to the right side of the map if he wants, right? He doesn't have to camp this side to get that shield buff. It's just not going to matter. Coast gets to pick it up. And still, lane pressure will be going the way of the Jade Dragons for the early game.
I mean, thus far this season, we've seen, the supports hesitant, or at least more so, to rotate out of this left-hand side. We've seen the 2v2 last 10, maybe even 15 minutes at times. And I'm not sure Mike is inclined to change any of that. Like, if I'm Mike, I spent the entirety of the late game last game linked to Coast. Why not spend the entire early game linked to Coast, guarantee him all the pressure that he could use over here and let LASBRA, who's, back on this Pele, he gets to be over here in the right lane, he gets to be in the mid lane, get a little bit of a lead for the Morrigan to transform into, and he doesn't have to worry about the dual lane at all.
Yeah, and I think that's going to be a big benefit. Of course, late game, Mike always has that option of just attaching to LASBRA or Dardez. But for now, sitting around duo, sitting around coast is definitely the best look for the Aphrodite. Slower pace, though, for comparatively to game number 1 and game number 2. It doesn't seem like we're going to be seeing that many sparks fly. I think LASBRA sort of popped off in game 1 in the early, but besides that, I feel like this set has been tapering down and more so focusing on at 12, we will fight, right? When the beacon spawns in and forces us to group up in one area, we will scrap. But up until that point, we're not going to overcommit. Ultimate's already available here, and Ronngyu jumps in. That should be a telltale sign that someone's nearby, and here comes Adaptive.
On the backside, LASBRA's rotated as well. Volcanic Lightning in the blink in. The snipes come through. PandaCat's the target. The beads as well channeled in. And the 4 hits of that Volcanic Lightning, not enough damage to finish onto the kill towards the bat. I like to see the aggression early, and especially I like to see LASBRA there. A little bit later on the rotation, but I think ensures that Adapting can't have his way with the fight.
Yeah, that might go a little bit differently if Volcanic Lightning connects, but it was just the AoE auto attacks afterwards, right? That AoE damage wasn't quite that slow. That could have made a big difference there. I mean, PandaCat's still sitting at level 4, right? He did not want to get connected on. He wanted to run and get out of that fight as quickly as possible. It's usually a death sentence, to be honest, if you get ganked at level 4 when the jungler has ultimate, so that's pretty impactful, the fact that he was able to stay alive there. Now, has ultimate, has the Suns if he wants to try and drop them at any given moment. But PBM has Undying Love, right? There still doesn't seem to be too much fighting happening over in that duo lane, unless those junglers come back with ults. And because of that, LASBRA just goes Soul Eater, right? He's not looking to scrap early. Even with a Soul Eater doesn't mean you can't, but you don't really love it.
Yeah, I'm a little bit surprised we don't see a stacking item. Hold that thought, though. Fineokay.
Tiger?
Under some pressure. Tiger stun. Good CC immunity, but it might slow him down too much. And LASBRA on the board first for a 3rd game in the row. Jade Dragons grab first blood yet again.
This may be a bit puzzling. I may be the only one that's confused about it, but this is like the 2nd or 3rd time, and fineokay does this a lot on his stream, where he still builds into the Golden Blade despite having gooseberries in the game. I feel as if you don't really need that much, clear. It helped him out with the Amaterasu game, but it still felt like late game he was a bit squishier. And this time around, I think that because of the timing of that gank, no matter what he built, he was going to fall down there, but certainly would have helped having a bit more physical defense. Either way, we'll have to see if that extra farm is what nets him, pressure over in lane. Falling down, Sheento dashes in.
Transformation, Dardez looking to finish off the kill. Baits out the Aegis, needs
Snipes.
a couple more swoops, and
There
the
it is.
snipes come through. VaporishCoast, the PandaCat over grabbing the 2nd kill of the game here for the Jade Dragons. And look at that player damage as well. He has been stacking it up already this game over the 3K mark. He wants to get involved early.
I mean, that is ridiculous. Not even the snipes. That was just a good play from Coast, but the fact that Sheento is going to thunder crash in onto the Morrigan. I mean, you got to think, if you're not bursting Dardez before he transforms, you're not getting out, right? You have dashed in, you have committed to the fight. Of course, he can just transform into Adapting, wait out the Aegis, and start swooping. Luckily, Coast is there to make sure the swoops didn't need to connect. That's a beautiful play, and also a little rough for Sheento, losing the Aegis and ended up dropping there, giving that kill over to Coast. Means that the Jade Dragons are off to a great start. 1 kill over to LASBRA. He's still stacking up that Soul Eater. And now, giving that 1 lead over to the duo lane, which I'm sure was already ahead just by nature of faster clear and shield buff confirmation, but now Coast definitely has that lead over PandaCat.
Lead, we'll see if he makes use of it on the left-hand side. He's been one to sort of farm up and like get engaged as soon as the supports leave as well. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see him look for that solo kill as soon as the supports are out of there. In fact, he might look for it a little bit even earlier as PandaCat's left alone on this left-hand side. Ronngyu forced into the back. Ronngyu this game ends up on that Cerberus pick, one that when it got locked in, I thought initially he was going to head over towards the solo lane. We get a little bit of a scrap over on this Gold Fury. Everybody disengages, but Ronngyu ends up with the dog instead, and fineokay on that Hercules. Is that the right play to try and give a little bit more aggression over to Ronngyu, put him on the Cerberus?
I don't think it's the aggression so much as they're tired of Mike just healing up his team, right? I mean, game number 1, Yemoja, ridiculous amount of healing. Game number 2, Aphrodite, sustain is still massive. Game number 3, let's get a Cerberus right next to him in lane so that sustain is not as impactful. Not going to say it's the objective right or wrong call, because so far the Leviathans are falling behind. But I can see the thought process, right? I can chase that yarn of, hey, we need to deal with this anti-heal. It's going to be a problem. Can you deal with the Fury? Here comes adapting from the back. He's here already.
They know he's here, still holding on to the Fury, but they hop off of it and head towards the bat. But Sheento, he's got the dash in PBM, target off the bat, still holding on to that ultimate. Does he not have it?
No mana.
He out of mana, doesn't get to use the Undying Love. And in fact, the chase not done quite yet. Coast forced to use the beads, but the re-engage. Dardez in, finds the stun on his own, and the snipes are beautiful. PandaCat taken down, and Nika with the rotation over. The answer back from the Jade Dragons could not look better. They go 2 for 1 in the fight.
Wow, I really thought they'd go in for the Fury there with that rotation in from Nika, but it looks like just the stop of the aggression is what they were after. fineokay had the teleport, but opts not to use it. Rather not rotate than rotate late. I tend to agree in this situation. Just push waves, just try and get some farm. That fight was done. But that was beautiful by adapting just to stop that Fury. I can't believe that it goes so wrong. I mean, PandaCat immediately regrets pushing up with the rest of his squad. I thought Coast was getting dove as well. They're like, hey, Rama's here. Let's go in for it. But thanks to not only Dardez finding a good stun, but that teleport from Nika and the snipes from Coast, PandaCat gets put down. Another death goes the way of the Leviathans. Good lead starting to build up here for the Jade Dragons. I think they were a little bit overcommitted towards that Fury, but as long as they're in a good position where they have ward coverage and you don't have Mike with 0 mana, you could probably go in for that play again, or at least attempt to before the beacon spawns in.
The Jade Dragons in game number 2 with this Aphrodite, we talked about it a little bit at the end, but they're playing the punish game. They're waiting for the Levi's to step up too far, make a small mistake in that fight, and even turn things into mistakes that don't feel like mistakes. Like I didn't think adapting made a bad play there, and then they killed both of them, right? Like the re-engage, just unexpected almost from the Jade Dragons, and that's what they're waiting for, is for the Levi's to step up and think they have the advantage, and then try and turn things around. And if you're the Levi's, you have to be identifying that. If you're looking at, okay, the Jade Dragons are just waiting for us to make a mistake, do you just, I mean, you have to be more selective with your engagements, but how do you round out that, so you're making better choices around these objectives?
Well, you have to understand that adapting can make that play because he's Camazotz, right? He can step that far forward. He's got bat out of hell. He's going to get out. PandaCat doesn't have that same luxury, right? If they're in, Ronngyu and PandaCat both step forward. If they're in for completion. Like they need that fight to end in their favor, which unfortunately, because of the rotations in, ends up not. But adapting gets set forward. He's not going to be out of position. See, look at this. Between adapting and Ronngyu, who are you going to chase down? They end up going for Ronngyu. Doesn't net anything, but shield buff goes down. Now that Fury, as well as that beacon, are on the minds of the Jade Dragons. They're nearby, and adapting is on some wards. Doesn't seem like the Jade Dragons are going anywhere. They're dashing forward. They still want this fight.
Roll in from Coast, the ultimate up as well from both of these ADCs. And the snipes off the mark a little bit, but that's a lot of resources used before this beacon spawns. So unlikely that the Jade Dragons want to try and force something in the next couple of seconds. Frenzy down. No relics down for the carries thus far, but a couple of ultimates as well expended. Haven't seen the beacon be a huge fighting point over the last couple of games over this phase as well, ever since they made those small changes. Hasn't been something that people are as willing to die over. But, I mean, notably, the Gold Fury, one that has been snuck away in, I think, 2 out of 2 games thus far. So we'll have to see if either squad is able to find an opening to try and take away these neutral objectives without a fight as they've done in the past.
Does seem like be the call. Coast still attached at the hip with PBM, dashing forward, just looking for a fight. Not going to be able to dive this one, unfortunately. PandaCat uses that wing shard to get out of trouble. But either way, there's not going to be any more 1v1s. It seems like Mike is going to be stuck next to this Rama for the rest of the game. As that beacon went down, you were right. Not enough to really warrant a fight. Just giving that one up to the Jade Dragons for absolute free. LASBRA is hovering around here, though. Will fineokay... Oh, he stepped over a ward. There's no way fineokay's going to driving strike now, right? I think he actually used it. He used it just then, but it's already back up. You can't dive this tower, though. They're going to try.
They're going to try indeed. Nika has a little bit of the dive there, but they'll just take away a Bastion with that ultimate. And that's the hesitation there. Or you know what? It's not even hesitation. It's just the inability to, like, you just don't have the damage quite yet online. And that's why these games have felt a little bit slower. They've been going a little bit later. We're waiting for those 3 item spikes, for those even 4 item spikes, upgraded starters, as we get towards the more important fights that the Jade Dragons were really finding the answers back to in game number 2. And so if I'm the Leviathans, I'm almost trying to find that engagement myself, especially since, you know, some of these power spikes right now, you're in an opportunity where the gold lead might not matter as much. It's still pretty close right now, maybe a little bit ahead on some of those tier 2 items, but I wonder if the Levi's have sort of a drop all in that kit. You drop the Hu Yi ult, you fight over an objective, maybe a little bit more willing to 50-50 with this composition.
They certainly do have the ability to get active. It's just been, you know, fearful, because you never know what Dardez can transform into. He could be behind you at any given moment. It's not like they have a Heimdall to really track stealth. Adapting needs to be pretty on point with, you know, pointing out where Dardez is. Teleport channeled once again. It's Nika showing up on the left side of the map. fineokay doesn't have the upgraded teleport, so he can't join as quickly. He could go to a tower, but it seems like finally the Jade Dragons are going for a pull here. fineokay, do you have the gold to back up an upgrade? No, he's not even backing. He's just going for tower. It looks like the Fury will be given the advantage towards the Jade Dragons, at least for a bit.
Man advantage in favor of the Dragons. Looking for the steal there. Ronngyu in range. And the ultimate dropped from Hu Yi forces everybody off. They're pulling it, though. It's still at a low health bar. The fight after the fact could be turned on to the Dragons, but it's Ronngyu getting burned down quickly as LASBRA gets taken down in the mid lane. Nika finds the safety, but Dardez answers 1-for-1 onto Ronngyu, and PandaCat gets deleted on the backside of the fight as well. The Dragons still looking for the Gold Fury. They've got 2 so far.
They've got to stay, and they want to stick around for a bit, but they've lost a lot of ultimates. Walking into fineokay is scary, but can you go in for Sheento? He misses the stun, and now Dardez is taking a lot of damage, forced to Aegis, but Coast dashes in.
Coast dashes in indeed, adapting, looking for the swoops, needs to find the damage, but Nika on the backside finishes off Sheento, and fineokay, he's the target of the aggression now. Finds the safety under the tier 1 tower, but the Dragons, they call the Leviathans to respond. They pick up the Gold Fury, they force them to step in, they get a couple of kills. Now they're over on the Pyromancer, and no contestant from the Leviathans.
Boulder? No, he had it, just decided not to throw. It didn't really have the vision. I respect that. fineokay wasn't quite sure if he was putting himself out of position to walk forward. Needed that ward coverage to commit. But once again, I mean, LASBRA gets picked before that fight really gets started. It didn't seem like something that could happen. I figured LASBRA would just be able to get out, but no. It was the dash in from Sheento, it was the full commit from adapting. You get that pick, but then you look at, oh, Ronngyu has vastly overstepped. PandaCat has vastly overstepped. Immediately, the fight turns on its head, and the Jade Dragons are able to just chase down with the movement speed from Aphrodite. Unfortunate it wasn't able to turn to a Fury, but hey, if you're the Jade Dragons and you just won that fight, I was going to say, are you looking to pull the Gold Fury again? Seems like no. Nika already teleported over. Does not quite have a back off cooldown. So it looks like that's going to be it. You take your Runic Bomb, and you take your small win. PolarBearMike got to pick that one up. But finally, we get to see someone else attached to PolarBearMike, right? LASBRA is connected to the Aphrodite here. It's been Coast pretty much all game, if not for a couple seconds just to heal up some more members of the Jade Dragons. But in doing so, that's just put a lot of confidence into Coast when he's already extremely confident. He's been dashing in a lot on Rama, which, sure, you get the extra cripple, but can be scary at times when you're just using your dash aggressively.
fineokay, he's got the teleport online and comes to join the fight in mid. PolarBearMike knocked down to half HP, but a double push. No follow-up there early on to the fight. Ronngyu look for the stun. Dardez on the backside. Sheento knocked down to half HP. It does not get the ultimate off. A trade onto LASBRA, though, and a 1-for-1 thus far. The Leviathans still ready to fight back if fineokay can find a pull, and he's certainly looking for a Dardez in again on the front side of the fight. And the Jade Dragons just finding opportunity after opportunity to punish. This beacon fight still have the positioning on it.
Yeah, cannot let Dardez sneak up like this. I mean, that's a stun into a triple Dark Omen, gets the beads off of adapting, and essentially wins the poke battle to guarantee at least the beacon goes down. But I'm thinking, yeah, Gold Fury should be the next target. And that fight starts from Sheento getting his beads pulled. Immediate transformation into the Camazotz. I don't think LASBRA's damage was necessary. I'm not even sure he needed to die there to confirm that kill onto Sheento. I'm pretty sure the swoops and the snipes from Coast would have been enough, but LASBRA decided to go in, ends up dying for it. At the very least, the Jade Dragons get themselves the Fury afterwards. But fineokay, he's been working on this tier 1 tower for quite some time. He's able to get that one, get a little bit of extra gold in his team's pocket for now. Differentials, though, in the XP. Biggest, of course, dueling. Coast sitting at level 16. I got to assume very close to 17. Whereas PandaCat is working his way to 15. Not the great. Yeah, he's about a minion off 17. I always figured he's closer to 3 levels up at this point. Point being, trying to kill him's a good idea, and here comes the Leviathans to try this that.
Undying Love channeled early by Mike. They're satisfied with giving away the tier 1 tower, try and preserve that lead for Coast. And I think a smart play to keep your Rama on the map. On that left side, though, the Leviathans not afraid to try for something, but just can't find the right windows in to these fights. And I'm taking a look at the builds. It might be the damage output, right? You mentioned behind is PandaCat, so he's not as far along in that build, not going to hit those item spikes as early. And then Sheento, not only has he gone for the breastplate in that 3rd slot to try and stay alive, wasn't successful in that last engagement, but he has upgraded it into that glyph and just dedicating a lot of gold early there in the middle of the build to try and stay alive, which is going to lower that damage output a little.
Yeah, that's the big difference maker. If you're ahead, upgrading your Breastplate of Determination can be very solid, but when you're behind, it really does thwart a lot of what you're trying to do. Unfortunately, seems a bit necessary, right? LASBRA, Nika, and Dardez 50% of the time. Actually, 100% of the time he's diving you, but the majority of the time will also be a physical damage dealer, so the Breastplate will help Sheento out try and survive. But you're right, because he's behind, you got to think an Obsidian Shard or a Soul Reaver might have just been a bigger difference maker there in the team fight. But if you can't get Taiko Drums off, maybe it's better just to try and make sure you get that off and do a little bit less damage. I think that's the mindset there from Sheento as the tower drops. But fineokay looking for a pull, finds LASBRA, but isn't going to tish him up to the team. Grouping up towards this Pyromancer, though, is the call. Leviathans might have lost the poke war before it even started, though. Back to base goes Sheento and Ronngyu.
Yeah, maybe looking for a couple of item spikes, as it is that Obsidian Shard for the mid laner there. That's definitely going to make a difference when it comes to the damage in this next fight. And around the Fire Giant, we group all 5 members here for both squads. The Pyromancer being baited here by PBM, just picked up, doing a little bit of a damage check. Ultimate's on the board for everybody, and the poke war is there. And you mentioned how valuable that sustain is for PBM. And he's back to being linked to Coast. He doesn't, I mean, maybe on a dive he'll switch it, but like he's just stayed linked to Coast maybe like 80%, 90% of this game.
Well, it's difficult because LASBRA, as we know, likes to hide around corners, right? He likes to wait for someone to walk up, look for that 1v1. You're not going to link to Dardez because then everyone knows, hey, PBM's linked to someone who we can't see. I'm thinking he's probably pretty close to us. And Nika's Wukong, so I like it in this instance, right? Eventually, there's going to be a point where you probably want to link to LASBRA, help him die, but look at his build. My man's got 2 full defense items and a Soul Eater. LASBRA is not the one-shot Pele that we have seen time and time again in the meta. This is more so, I'm not going to say a support Pele, but he is not getting the solo kills. He is initiating fights and trying to set up for Dardez, for Nika, and for Coast. He's just not going to be finding those 100-0 situations like these other assassins, which is probably why Dardez is not transforming into him. Makes a lot of sense to me. Jade Dragons pick up another Runic Bomb. This one will go the way of Mike once again. Already used the first one on tier 1. But hey, Primal Fury, like clockwork, spawns in. And where do they go? Right at the left side of the map.
Headed over towards that Fury if they want to take it early on. And it looks like the Leviathans a little bit hesitant off the bat to step up to this one. Not sure if they want to put up a defense, but the Jade Dragons also, I don't think they know that it's as free as it seems to be. So they also will not hop onto the Fury. I'm taking a look at the builds, right? I think this Cerberus one is an interesting one for me. The Ronngyu, he goes to Thebes, he grabs the Contagion, wants the anti-heal early on, but still it feels so far behind in the build, and that's just supports. It is, right? But still trying to build towards some of those ROs needs more items to support the team.
Yeah, I mean, you've got 1,600 gold just in relics alone if you're Ronngyu, right? So you will be a bit behind PBM, who has upgraded the Bracer as well, but also has more gold to spend, right? The Jade Dragons are ahead in that nature, so feeling, hey, we need that cooldown med, that Cloak of the Ascetic is really going to help with the resets. A lot of ability-based characters on the side of the Leviathans. Ronngyu, Sheento adapting, even fineokay. Pretty much everyone besides Panda is going to appreciate the extra cooldowns, as well as Aphrodite is just annoying, so I can see why all of this pressure is put towards anti-heal. Titans pushing out the right side here shortly. This is usually an opportunity for teams to try and push elsewhere if they don't like their fight. Is this going to be just an easy Primal Fury? Is it going to be a grouping up towards the Titans? Given the Leviathan's positioning, we can sort of see the grouping, and I can see PandaCat, he's not sitting over in dual lane. He's going to make the rotation over, despite not having that starter upgrade. Still feels like he needs to be with his team to try and help shred through this Titan. I don't think the Jade Dragons are going to look for an actual Fire Giant, though. Probably to shred the Titan and bait in a fight. That's certainly possible, and probably something they're favored towards, I would say. Look at the level difference. I mean, LASBRA has upgraded that starter item, whereas Adapting has 3 full items to his name. It's really just a damage differential at the moment, and it's not easy to come back from those, especially in an even fight around FG.
And those upgraded starter items, they're starting to come through in terms of power spikes as well. Dardez just now grabbing his junglers, have it at his advantage, the ADC as well. Coast has his over the other side. And my eyes have been glued to Dardez in these fights. Even in that mid lane fight where you would think it would be impossible for him to get invisible because he's not coming from the jungle. You're fighting in the middle of a lane, and it feels so difficult to get into the backside. It's still, Dardez has found so many of these stun, combo off my damage, and then immediately transform. And he's got the Polyon line. He's just building to try and catch somebody out in the middle of the fight, it feels like.
Yeah, you have to watch out for LASBRA around every corner. You got to watch out for Dardez, just stealth right in front of you at any given moment. If you get stunned, Polydark Omen, you're dying no matter what he really transforms into, assuming you are a squishy character. Fire Giant is started up, and fineokay is going to be the first one in, but Ronngyu also has vision. The rest of the team's coming, but Adapting's a little bit late.
Look for LASBRA as well on the backside of this fight. I don't know that they don't have eyes on the Pele here. He could catch somebody off guard, but the Fire Giant's low as well. PandaCat's under pressure, and they burn both carry ultimates as the entire dive comes through. The snipes are there as well, not even needed, as PandaCat gets taken down, but the dive on the other side. Mike has to perform a miracle. He's got to keep him alive if he can, but the heals are not enough. The re-engage has to be there for the Dragons. Leviathans trade back 1, but 2 have fallen for them, and make it 3 as Sheento finds PBM at 2 for 3 thus far. Dardez, Ronngyu takes him down, and a 3 for 3 as the Leviathans fight back in a scrappy fight.
Wow, I mean, Sheento was one of the first targets in that fight. Really, it was PandaCat, but Sheento was there. I thought maybe some more damage would be put towards him, but you cannot let a Raijin free cast, clearly. I mean, if you get him 2-3 procs of Raiju in one fight, that is going to be disastrous, and that's exactly what happened. The damage was turned to just about everyone else. Coast got so much value out of his relics, but even with an Aphrodite, not enough to keep him alive through that engagement, thanks to Adapting, and of course Sheento rotating in after. Seemed like a fight that would have gone a lot better for the Jade Dragons, but the Leviathans came to play. That was a fantastic showing, and that's from behind. If you got one more item on Sheento there, or a PandaCat, is able to get a little bit of better use out of his relics, that might go a lot worse for the Jade Dragons.
Well, I think it was a lot of good targeting from the Leviathans. They leave the carries almost to die. Sheento miraculously somehow stays alive. Feels like it was him up against Dardez and Nika in that backline. But they see Coast go up into the air, and they're like, okay, we're just going to wait until you land. We're going to have 3 people standing here when you land so that we can try and take this fight. And it feels like they've identified Coast as the target, maybe rightfully so, if they can't deal with the divers. But now the Fire Giant picked back up and shredding fast, down to half HP already. Adapting!
He got so baited!
Jumps
He
the
got so
sun!
baited!
Sheento kills Dardez, and Fire Giant, the committal is there. The Leviathans take it away! And the damage now onto LASBRA. The escape has to come from the Jade Dragons, and I don't know that they have enough to get away. They will finally make it past the tier 2. They don't have the damage to continue, but the Leviathans, they've got one. They've got the Fire Giant.
Wow, adapting really said, I've got no clue you're there, Dardez. Psych jumps right over the stun. He can't even get into the ultimate. Dardez falls down, and the Fire Giant with it. I thought it was puzzling the Jade Dragons were even pulling, but now the Phoenix is half health. The Leviathans are going to play this one slow. Remember, they've got sustain from the Fire Giant and plenty of damage. This Phoenix should be easy to grab, but the Jade Dragons aren't giving it up. They're stepping forward here, which is a bit shocking.
5 versus 4, man advantage to the Leviathans just for a couple more seconds as Dardez now back from the gray screen. This is only a standard Fire Giant, not enhanced quite yet. And in fact, the Leviathans, they're still even in the gold lead. They just used that one fight to get back to parity.
Look at the relic timer, though. 3, 2, 1. Boom. That's Dardez's relics. I am amazed that the Jade Dragons didn't wait for that timer. If they wait for that time, there's nothing forcing them to pull Fire Giant, right? There is no fire waves pushing in. There's no lead that they desperately are trying to catch up on. They could have sat around and waited for Dardez's relics, but they didn't. He goes in stealth and just immediately evaporates because he has nothing else. He was by himself because that stun doesn't connect. I think if you wait for relics, that fight goes so much better, but now the Leviathans are in such a commanding position. They get to try and build this gold lead for themselves. And sure, they've got Adapting's Blink to wait for, but look at all these tier 2s they have to grab. They have plenty of gold they can get as well.
Plenty of gold on the map. Towers, only 2 remaining here. And fineokay will get caught out a little bit. Beads get forced from the Hercules. The Jade Dragon still looking to punish anybody who steps up into the wrong spot. And it's a blinking from... He's completely alone. Nobody is there to help with the follow-up, but he trades out his ult for Sheento's. At least will make that space. Relic down as well for Sheento's. They try to push up this tier 2 tower. Only a couple members of the Dragons here to try and defend. I think they're waiting for the Levi's to full commit.
Probably, but it looks like the Jade Dragons, if anything, are taking aggressive positioning here. With Sheento's beads down, he doesn't have the reaction that Adapting has, right? Even if you know for a fact that Dardez is near you, you're not going to be able to Thunder Crash that stun. You can try, but it's so delayed, whereas the Camo Leap is instant, which means you got to watch out. And Sheento is constantly checking his corners, looking for LASBRA, looking for Nika. Look at it. This man is not even helping. He's like, where are these guys at? I do not have beads. I don't want to get one shot. And it's a smart play. He doesn't quite have Taiko drums yet either, which means no CC immunity. You got to play this one safe. Ultimate from Sheento. Finally back up in a couple seconds, but not even a tier 2 tower. There's only 50 seconds left on FG, Frog. That might be it. Might just be that tier 2 over on right.
I think that's it. I think that's they get one tier 2. Certainly not awful. They get some global gold, but I think they're really holding on to what they needed to have learned about that last fight, because everything revolves. And we've beaten it to death at this point. The relics from Dardez, he doesn't have them to survive, but also just the game sense from Adapting.
You can't go on Adapting. That cannot be your target. I mean, even PandaCat has an instant dash. It is very telegraphed. The Morrigan stun, she makes this loud noise before it comes off. If you have any sort of reaction time, you can Aegis it, you can jump it. But it's worth it if you get an Aegis. If you get a jump, that is not worth it, right? You have put yourself out of position, no escape. You're forced to ult, especially if Sheento is nearby with damage. So, if you're not going on to a tank who is way up away from the carries, or I would say Sheento. Not a very great opportunity for Dardez to get involved. You got to let someone else go in first. You cannot be the first one to make contact with the enemy team. You're just not tanky enough.
Yeah, I think he may need to switch up the game plan. Try and change into. I mean, does it need to still be this dive, still switching into the Camazotz, or can he be transforming into the Cerberus maybe, trying to dive into the front line?
I think Cam is your safest bet. I mean, if you don't transform into the Cam, you're gonna die regardless, right? But if you get up into the air, that's your best get out of jail free card available. LASBRA, the way he is built, I'm not transforming into this Pele ever. You couldn't pay me, but adapting has the damage. He's got the safety. The only other call, if you really want to stall, is Nika, right? But even that, now you've transformed into Wukong, and you have to wait another 2 seconds or so before you're up in the sky. That's a bit sketchy. So I'm thinking adapting is the right call. It's just you can't go on adapting, right? And if you do go on adapting, it can't be surrounded by carries of the Leviathans. It was a lot of bad situations stacked into one there. I'm still keeping my eye on Dardez, but I'd be willing to bet he doesn't go on the bat again.
Well, you see how he's changed the build. He's got a Magi's now. He is like ready for that engagement, wants to make sure that no matter what, he will be able to get a transformation off in the worst case scenario. PBM, he's got a Magi's as well. And everything is set up around this Fire Giant. Jade Dragons, they're the ones that have the advantageous positioning. But I think probably a little bit hesitant to pull it, given the situation that happened last time. VaporishCoast, they're just sitting there, just sitting there baiting it. But I mean, they have to find. I don't know if they can stick on this Fire Giant.
No, they're gonna reset for sure. There was a decent attempt, you saw. Instead of going in for the stun, Dardez just leads with the poly shot in the Dark Omen, only connects with the Dark Omen, but that's a big difference. Nika has been going in for that Blink Tiger stun. Remember, it connected with Sheento last time. That's probably still the target, but Sheento has not been stepping up. Fire Giant once again pulled, trying to bait in the Leviathans, but Nika's already in the backline. He should have a good opportunity for Sheento here.
They have no idea that the Sun Wukong is behind them. The Fire Giant gets pulled. There's a ward, though, a blue ward. You see it right behind Sheento. Nika's on it. They see him. Now the blink in. No beads from PandaCat. And they turn things around. Adapting has gotten... Oh my goodness, I don't even know what hit him. But he burns the ultimate and trades it for the snipes from Coast. At least they force out the jungler. An ult for ult trade. But Nika burns his safety card as well. All of a sudden, the Jade Dragons try to find it all in one motion. They force some Leviathans back, but they pick up the Fire Giant one more time.
I think it's really the relics they got that's the big difference maker. You get beads off of adapting, you get beads off of fineokay, and you get beads off of PandaCat. That means that the safety of the Leviathans is cut in half. Jade Dragons have to wait for those ult cooldowns, but when they're back up, they've got their safety relics down. Sure, you lose Nika's blink, but he'll be alright as long as Somersault Cloud is available. I don't want to see a pull until it is available, though. That's the difference maker. You have done the hard part. Safety relics all gone for fineokay, for adapting, and of course PandaCat still has Aegis. Now you just wait. In about 20 seconds, Nika will have Somersault Cloud, Coast will be pretty close to Snipes, and you can go in for the pull again. And that is going to be where the Jade Dragons have put themselves in the best position possible. Their Bracer, I believe, was knocked down though, which means they're going to lose a bit of that extra damage. Either way, they've got the vision. I don't know if that wraparound play is going to work twice though. Surely Sheento's watching his back now just to make sure there's no one behind him.
Yeah, the Leviathans, they've been solid
Ronngyu?
on the ward coverage. Ronngyu,
Snipes?
he has to jump away. The snipes have to be
There
good.
it is.
They are. VaporishCoast finds the support as he steps up a little bit too far. And the damage comes out too fast. The Jade Dragons find a pick onto the enemy support and now have picked up the Fire Giant. PandaCat still with no beads available in fineokay. No relics for him as well. FG down to half HP, but look for Dardez! He burns the relics off the mid laner, transforms into the Sun Wukong as the chase goes on. They're off the objective and chasing down the blue squad. The Sun Wukong ultimate there for Dardez, so get back a little bit of that HP. But the Dragons still with the positioning.
That pulls the beats and the Aegis off of Sheento, though. Now defending is so scary. PandaCat still no beats for 38 seconds. Same with adapting, and Fire Giant has been pulled. Here comes the teleport, though. fineokay is going to be in behind, and FG's getting low.
Blink in from LASBRA, and no beats for PandaCat means the dash is so late. He's fighting Nika, and LASBRA finds one as well. The 2 carries down for the Leviathans, and the Dragons, they're chasing fineokay as well. A 3-man sweep for the Dragons. They don't even need the Fire Giant. Couple of them heading back to base. They're going to push down the right-hand side.
Yeah, Adapting is waiting here, saying, hey, you guys going to go for EFG? Maybe I can steal. They don't care about the EFG. They're pushing up right lane. Some low health bars here. I don't think you can go in for the end call that easily, but they have plenty of healing. It looks like that is their play. They said, forget about it. Adapting doesn't have ult. We are going to try and go in for the Phoenix and try our health bars.
38 minutes here. They do not have the
man,
damage.
they're gone.
Maybe, I don't know. Ronngyu, he has to run towards his own Phoenix, and his health bar is gone. Adapting, the only member left alive, and he does not have enough in him to fight up against 5. The Dragons, they break the curse. They take the 3-0.
The Jade Dragons 3-0 the Leviathans. This is a set that I couldn't have predicted a week ago if I tried. But this is what we talked about during Waiting Room. We said, does adding Coast really, is that the big difference maker between the sieges, right? Is having someone who's going to play this aggressive, is that going to make the, I don't know if we call it a curse, but the reverse sweep situation that was going on with the Jade Dragons, where they could go up 2-0 against anyone, but they couldn't close it out. This is the number 1 team in the league as far as I'm concerned, and they just took them down 3-0.
No, I mean, the Leviathans, they were standing tall coming into this set. They had taken down the Ferryman earlier in the week.
Ferryman.
Right, knocked down the undefeated team. They've looked dominant since that week 1 loss. They haven't fallen at all. And now the Jade Dragons come out, they make a roster change. They've had less than a week to scrim with this Coast guy.
Who even is that?
He just comes out and they sweep the Leviathans. Crazy gameplay. The Jade Dragons, they take it in a clean 3-0 against Leviathans. That'll do it for me and Trelly on the cast. We'll throw it to Gore and Inbound on the desk.
It's a 3-0 and Inbound. Man, does it look good for the Dragons. Again, this is one that you come into it, and much like Trelly was saying, where it's kind of like, okay, like, you changed your carry. How much does that change for the team environment? Mike had even said, he's like, yes, I've wanted to play with Coast. Actually, even talked about it at the beginning of the year, but we needed to change, and it needed to be the team environment and the team as a core, as a whole. And lo and behold, it made a big old difference. Coast looked great this set, and the rest of the Dragons looked great with them.
Just as a start, this is a stepping stone towards the rest of the year. This is one set. It is not explaining the rest of the year, telling you what's going to be happening. But this is about as good of a first step as you can get. There's obviously improvements that can be made. There's improvements that can be made by both the Levi's also. But for a first set to play against the, as you said, I mean, after they beat the Ferryman, Levi's are probably one of the best teams, if not the best team in the league. And to go out there and to dominate every single set, for the most point from start to finish, it is a great start to this second half of this Phase 2. Coast looked comfortable on this team. The team looked comfortable around Coast. All in all, just a great first set for this new-look Dragons team.
And realistically, we get to see, first off, you're going to be seeing a lot of that because Coast was hitting snipes like no other. I mean, I was getting, look, we referenced it yesterday. This is, when we talk about, like, Season 2 Snoopy ROM, that's what I'm talking about, is hitting every single shot while you're up in the sky. And making the ROM look really good. And this was after 2 dominating performances on Anhur. But it was that question, right? Much like you said, which was, like, again, how much is it going to change for the team? And for them as well, I heard them all cheering pretty loudly after the 3-0, and I'm sure part of it's the win, but I think another part of it is because going up 2-0, it's fun to joke about it, but like really consistently and unfortunately way too consistently, has caused this team a lot of trouble for the Dragons, right? In the days of best of 3s, you get the 2, you're done, and that's all you needed. But now that we've swapped over, like, I think that was, much like Charlie said, maybe like, and much like you said, not indicative of what the future's going to hold, but a really great way to start things off and not get in your own head.
And something cool that Coast was doing after every single game is he was standing up and he was giving knuckles to everyone else. He was giving everyone their props and kind of just showing himself like, this is like the team, this is how we're going to do it. We're winning these games. We're going to celebrate after these games. And not just the games, the sets too. After this 3-0, not a single drop by the Dragons today. As you can see, across the board, I mean, great game by the Dragons. A lot of strength stuck out. Mike again on the Aphrodite. plays it very well. Not a ton of damage, but you're not really playing Aphrodite for
I
damage.
was going to say, if you're looking at him for the damage, your eyes are going maybe too far over. Look, 24,000 from Nika and Dardez as well. Like, it's easy to throw the praise on to Coast, because Coast, I think, had a phenomenal set. But really looking at what Dardez and Nika were able to provide for today, what LASBRA was able to do on the Pele as well, I think that you just got a really solid performance from the Dragons top to bottom. So it was really, at least in my eyes, super fun to watch what they were able to provide in that draft. I know even going into that last game, we were a little more on the fence about it, and there were even moments in the game where it's like, this is where the Leviathans take over. This is the play, and unfortunately for the Leviathans, it just never came. But you don't just have to take it from us if you're wondering how the player mentality is. We've got it on good authority that it stands for Pretty Baller Mustache. We got PBM standing by for an interview.
That's right. We do have PBM here for the interview. Loving the mustache, of course. The fan. Huge fan of it. I got to talk about the Aphrodite first. I think that you're one of the only people that continues to go back to it. It was a big sticking point in phase number 1. And I think early on in the phase, maybe a lot of people were questioning that pick from you guys, but something that you feel comfortable on. How do you feel that drives your composition?
Yeah, everyone was just saying we couldn't win with it, but we couldn't win anything in phase 1. So, like, I think it just didn't matter. It's a pick I'm really confident on. I think it does a lot of things well. Always an opportunity to improve with it and get a little better. I think I made a couple bad plays in that last game. But yeah, I just think it's a strong god.
I mean, you guys definitely have a unique take on the composition, and I got to ask about the roster change. We've all been talking about it. You spent a little bit of time on stream, I think, breaking down a couple of the more popular questions. But now that you guys have come out here and won a set with Coast, I think you've screwed with them maybe less than a week at this point. How do the vibes feel? Does it feel like you guys are gelling well so far?
Yeah, for sure. We got to play 3 days of scrims, which isn't too bad. I mean, going into a first match, that's pretty par for the course. Yeah, it wasn't a gameplay issue with Vote really at all. It was just the energy. I just think we needed to change. Unfortunately, kind of got the short end of the stick on that, but I think it's definitely helped us. You can see the energy that Coast had after the set, like after every game. It's definitely rejuvenating for us. Excuse me.
No, I mean, he brings a lot of energy, that duel, and I think he grabbed a solo kill in game number 2 against PandaCat. I mean, with the change, obviously, we're a little bit more than halfway through the road to Worlds now at this point, but still plenty of time to improve, to gel continuing. How you guys feeling for the rest of the phase?
Feeling good. Our record's not great, but just every day is an opportunity to improve. That's something I've always said. So just trying to get better every week, every day. Continue to learn how we want to play with Coast, get better, and yeah, I'm feeling good.
Feeling good. Every day is an opportunity to improve. Great quote. Well, congratulations once again on the 3-0. That's from PBM. We'll throw it back to the desk.
That reminds me of one that I grew up hearing a ton, which is every day is a great day to learn. And that's exactly what they're improvement learning. That's what they're doing, and that's what the focus is on. I'm excited to see what the Dragons have to continue offering, and of course, today they give us an answer back. Right, we were talking coming into this Leviathans 3-0 Dragons at the beginning of the phase, and so a nice little answer back to at least keep them tied. Going to cause a lot of hell if the head-to-heads be equal towards the end of it, but a win nonetheless here, and a monumental one because as Mike said. Not just that they weren't winning on Aphrodite, but that they weren't winning at all. Now they're going to be turning some of that around. They were 1-4 coming into this inbound. Now being able to bump some of that up. I'm wondering, in your eyes, like, is this do you need to see more, or do you think the 3 games right now is enough for you to say, like, this is going to be an improving Dragons constantly?
I mean, you definitely have to start off by saying this is a great first set you could have. This is probably the best first set you could have as a new team. But it is still only 1 set. The entirety of this phase is still 5 more sets left, or 4 more, sorry, for them, sets left. It's an entire phase thing that they have to be doing. This is not just a 1-set thing. Great first step, yes, but it's not the end-all, be-all. They have to continue improving.
And like you said, after this, now that they've played 6, or 2 and 4, they've got 4 more. So the best they could do is 6 and 4, right, at the very end of it, and that's going to maybe be their goal. As they take down the Leviathans 3-0 here, we're going to be moving forward pretty soon to the Warriors and the Ravens. Now, the Warriors and the Ravens, another one that is exciting to watch, and another one that was on day 1 of this Road to Worlds. It was actually the headlining set, which was, I believe, set by, if I remember correctly, the ferryman I'm sorry, I'm miscrediting it. It was Mike, literally Mike, who had set up the storyline for it. And had put them in the same group and set that as the first matchup. It was the Warriors 3-0ing the Ravens. They're going to try to do the same thing today. They're 4-1. The Ravens are 3-3. And we'll get to see just what they have to offer for us.
And if the Ravens are really going to make a push for that first spot in the Chaos Division, this is a game they need to, a set that they need to win.
Yeah.
If you lose 2-0 to somebody else in your division, it's going to be very difficult to pass them up. So this is one the Ravens need. The Ravens have looked really good recently, so that is props to them. And the Warriors have not looked unbeatable as we expected them to be. So this is, as you said, going to be a great set.
Especially, in much to your talk about standings, if you lose this one, like you said, not only are you 0-2 against them, but that means that like the worst case scenario from the Warriors, assuming they lose all out after that, would be 5-5. And so you're like having to hope that you're either ending at that point 6-4. You'd have to win out as well to make those little shifts, at least in those win-loss columns. So a big one for the Ravens if they want to be able to take over the top. A big one for them if they even just want to take second as of right now over the Kings. We'll have to find out what they have to offer and what the Warriors are going to give us right after this quick break.